251. Camping on the Comet. Year 253, Part 2. Hafiz died. Stella said. There will be consequences that I will have to deal with. Already I felt brewing discontent among the heroes, and some went to their hero's journal for solace. Stella got the notification on the fragments too, and she waited on the demonic turtle world. Her eyes and magical senses was waiting for the comet. It was almost within range. It was so very close. I had already regenerated Alka's destroyed limb, but he still needed some time to rest. He wasn't ready for the attack, yet. Lumuf added a prayer. May he find peace in his sacrifice. Stella nodded. Peace, and hopefully the gods hold up their bargain. The demon's comet entered the range of our void mages, and then we were immediately hit with the sensation of something pushing at our minds. Stella, you feel that? Lumuf said. Edna, Rune and Johann gathered around Stella. It was now within our portal range, and their magical senses got to work. The void mages looked grim. We've got to go first, Stella said. Ready. Lumuf shook his head. Never, but let's go. I shared the feeling that we won't ever be ready for what awaited us, but there was no delaying the inevitable. I could feel our collective resolve to get this shit over with. Stella nodded. Well, let's see whether our portals can get through. They did, and Lumuf was first to go through, entirely encased in magical shields. Lumuf stepped through the magical portal, and we were immediately assaulted by the overwhelming presence of demonic magic. It was as if the entirety of the rotted lands was amplified 1,000-fold and distilled onto this comet. The comet's surface was filled with reddish spires, filled with spawning pools. A demon champion attacked us almost instantly, its claws smashed into a wall of wood. Well, that's the welcoming party I was expecting. Lumuf smirked, as his feet touched the crystalline floor. He scanned the surface to answer our key issue and cursed. There are places here that Eon can't deploy his clone. Well, need to look for it. Edna, Rune, and Johann joined the fray soon after, only to find ourselves surrounded by more demon champions. Well, Edna looked amused as she eyed the demon champions. Were we too early? We also come with gifts. Her anti-demon spears rained down on the champions, and soon the landing area was cleared of demons. There's strong magic holding this entire place together. Stella cursed. Her magical senses were the strongest of the domain holders. Lumuf's senses were instead constantly disturbed by the swirling demonic magic in the comet. Rune and Johann looked around, only to find more demon champions throughout the place. Should we call the rest of the team? We need to start bombing this place. Stella shook her head, as she examined the crystals. I think bombing this place up from the surface won't work. These things are particularly magic resistant. The effects of magical bombs would be reduced. We need to figure out what's holding it together. Do we need to? Rune shrugged. It's definitely a demon king. Or a core. Or both. Fairly sure that if we get to the core, kill the demon king, the comet will then disintegrate. Whatever keeping this ball of rock and crystals together will break apart. Kinda annoying that we prepped for so much explosions only to find out it's not as useful as we like. We can use it on the core. Rune said. Portal to the source. Stella shook her head. There's a core. The central area of this comet has some kind of magical winds shearing away my attempts to form a portal. See, Rune said smugly, much to the annoyance of the rest of them. I suppose we should be looking for a way to the core, then. You think there will be a pit, just like the world's? Stella could only shrug. She had no answer, and her magical senses couldn't. There was a pulse of intense magical energy, and all my domain holders recoiled. Stella immediately created a magical shield around herself, and the rest of them were protected by Lumuf's wooden spherical shield. It lasted for a good 30 minutes, and it felt like the entire surface was cooked. The dirt below us was incredibly hot, that it was almost burning, and the red crystals glowed like they were a lamp. TTHE core itself released a strong burst of heat and magical energy that burnt everything on the surface. Except demon champions. Even lesser demons were destroyed by the burst of heat. That rules out the surface team. Edna cursed, as she observed the heavy burns on the wooden spherical shield. Sounds like the demons had experience with people invading their comets. Rune mused. Stella didn't. Instead, she seemed thoughtful for a while. The magical energies came from multiple areas underneath the surface, not really the core. There seems to be certain parts of this comet that contain. At that point, their conversation was interrupted. A group of demons emerged, and a quick read of their magical energies revealed they were likely to be formed from the merger of multiple demon champions. We've known they could merge, just like how the demon walkers merged to form the demon supercannon. When did the demons have such powerful creatures? Rune cursed, as the demons attacked. What do you mean, when? Johann countered as the swarm of merged demon champions attacked. He deftly dodged the demons' attacks, and could easily counterattack. My domain holders were more than a match for these merged demon champions. Demon champions, on their own, were generally classified as threats around levels 80 to 100. If someone had anti-demonic super blessings, like myself, I could handle them at level 60. Many of my Valthorns had lesser anti-demonic blessings, and I've seen my own Valthorns defeat a demon champion single-handedly at level 65. These merged creatures were stronger, around level 120 to 130, but my domain holders were in their level 160s to 170s. It wasn't much of a fight. Lumuf stood his ground, and my roots emerged to wrestle with these demon champions. My mana flowed through my avatar and my roots, then attempted to overwhelm these demon champions. We won easily, the demon champions suffered tremendous damage and victory was at hand. A pulse from the comet's core, and a sudden surge of demonic mana once more. It was so thick that it felt like I was absorbing demonic mana just by existing. The demon champions devoured the thick demonic mana like a parched man, and their wounds mended. We cursed as we watch our attacks were regenerated so quickly. We need to blow them up in one go, or this crazy demonic mana will just regenerate the whole thing. Rune cursed. He was able to blow up one of the merged demon champions in a single magical shot, but it clearly took a lot of energy. I recalled that earlier incident with the separated demon king, and how their soul imprints served as the foundation of the regeneration. I wanted to search for similar, but then I quickly realized that the demons were not regenerating themselves, but reconstructing themselves. Just to be sure, I briefly activated spirit vision through my priest and found none that these demon champions were just hastily cobbled together, fueled by the abundant demonic mana released by the comet itself. If they are indestructible like this, Edna cursed, can you imagine demon kings constantly regenerating? That's a horrible prospect to imagine, Rune responded while he blew up another of the demon champion, but he wasn't thorough enough. A part of it survived and began to quickly reassemble itself from the dirt and crystals around it. This entire damned comet is just fuel for the demons. Lumuf realized this was going nowhere and decided the best way forward was to drain away the demonic mana. Roots and vines expanded everywhere. I am going to drain the demonic mana. Take that window to blow them up completely. Got it. He sucked the demonic mana from the air itself and from the ground. It reduced the density of the demonic energies for a brief window, which my champions quickly utilized to crush the demons. The demon champions couldn't regenerate, and for now, we had our victory. They were all destroyed. Then the pulse happened again. More demon champions emerged, and they repeated the strategy. It was exhausting. We'll have to stay here for the next 2 years until we can deploy Eons' clone. Rune cursed, as they fought through the demon champions. The comet didn't have much of an atmosphere, so it was through magic that they could function. It drained them slightly, but it was a constant drain that detracted from their fighting strength. They leveled slightly after they fought through the 10th batch of demon champions. They moved and looked for the entrance. But this entire thing was a creation of the demons, and Stella suspected it was built layer by layer. So, there was no entrance. We have to punch a way to the center, Edna said as she remembered the various plans they created. We were prepared for that. In fact, one of the options was to use my Titan slot to create a digging type Titan, but it's likely we'll need to provide its support while it dug to the center of this massive thing. Let's just find a place where Eon can place his clone, secure the location, and wait until the clone is ready. My avatar reiterated the strategy. We'll just have to endure until then. The question is whether to bring the rest of the team over. Stella asked. The comet and Turtleworld will only share an intersection for only about a year. After that year, we'll only be able to reach the comet once it intersects with Lavaworld many years later. Edna, Rune and Johann looked at each other. Then Johann said, we could use some support. Let's bring 30 of the strongest ones, to cover us while some of us rest. If we're going to be fighting constantly for the next 2 years, we'll need rest and rotation. All right then, Stella said. About 30 Valthorns, all ranging around level 125 to 149, prepared themselves for the move to the comet. They would bring resources and materials with them, to prepare for a long war. 2 years of constant harassment by the endless demons before I would be able to deploy my clone. They bring with them anti-mana weapons, made from the same anti-magic sand. It was effective in reducing the mana density of the surroundings, but only up to their absorption limit. This meant they could slow down the rate of the demon champion's regeneration, and increase the damage window available for us to permanently destroy the demons. Lumuf naturally talked about whether it's possible to push back the demonic mana by converting the ground. I'd use the forest rod, he suggested. But with the overwhelming demonic mana from the core, it might just get pushed back. The core flared again. The Valthorns were all equipped with magical shields and my familiars, and it activated to protect them from the char. The demon's core flared intermittently, at least once a day. Every time it did, the force of 5 domain holders and 30 Valthorns had to brace for attacks. I am fine now, Alka said, and he felt healthy. My checks indicated he mostly recovered from the battle after 3 weeks of recovery. I need to join the rest of them. My dwarven explosions expert stretched and equipped himself. The news of our discoveries were relayed to the local team, and we probably needed to activate my titans on the comet. Utility. That was the function of my titans. They can't deal the sort of damage needed to hurt demon kings, but their utility is where they excelled. Alka was generally receptive of the idea. A few earth mages together with my future digging titan should do quite well. I rechecked my titan options that I first encountered almost 90 years ago, back when it was year 163. In terms of digging utility, I have 3 main options. The depth worm was likely to be the best at digging since that was its specialization. Depth worm starts at level 70. A creature of the subterranean world. Extremely good at digging and making tunnels. Has very good earth sense and is able to detect hidden features in the deep ground. Weak to magical attack. Also produces certain types of minerals and metals. Fusion with horns. Starts at level 80. Transforms horns into a Goliath kingbeetle that's able to use earth magic and various other protective and offensive abilities. Goliath kingbeetle can create royal warbeetles. Also produces very high quality beetle silk. Royal warbeetles can improve crop output in the area. Giant tree serpent. Nidus, a massive serpent. Able to use earth and wood magic. Starts at level 70. Gains powers to summon all sorts of serpents and poisons. Master of poisons and has the ability to brew multiple types of potent poisons and cures. Able to grant poison immunity. Although they lagged behind in terms of levels compared to my level 125 to 149 Earth mages, Titans are very good at their narrow scope of tasks, just like how Patrick is incredible at mind reading and computation. So, the Depth Worm, or Earth Magic Titan could be just as competent at moving Earth, or more. Think the Depth Worm's the best choice. My advisors said. Horn was mostly bored out of his mind, but being an artificial mind, he wasn't the type to complain all that much. I probably could disassemble Titan souls now since it's been a long time since I meddled with them. My comprehension of the souls improved a lot. Alka landed on the comet and smiled at the rest of the domain holders. He gave the rest of them a hug. The rest of them were taking a rest, in between the constant demonic harassment. We were wondering when you'd join us, Johann said while petting his pet dragon. Welcome to hell. I heard you lost a hand. I thought that's Lava World. Alka laughed and flexed his arm. Nothing Eon couldn't fix. That's just purgatory. Stella smiled. This is the first layer of the pits where we face endless evils. Sounds like fun. Everyone rolled their eyes. You'll change your mind soon enough. There was at least one wave of demon attack per day, often two. This is like a dungeon that never quite ends. Exactly what we've been looking for. Alka laughed as he eyed the rest of the Valthorns. He recognized most of them. Most high-level 125 to 149s were friends of the domain holders and interacted with them a lot. A place with high-level threats for Valthorns to level. For the Valthorns, this was indeed a great leveling opportunity. Yet, after the constant harassment, it did feel tiring. I don't really see why we need to camp here. One of the Valthorns said. Can't we just jump in a few days before the window closes? There is a year after all. That was a valid point, but Stella answered frankly. We're not taking risks with portals. Our portals can be easily shredded by unusual magics, and this comet is filled with surprises. If we are here, let's just wait it out. 2 years of constantly fighting demons. Man, it's like we're back to the old era again. One of the Valthorns sounded nostalgic. Bet those battle nuts on Mountain World would love to be here. Alka shrugged as he scanned the horizon of demonic spires. They were camped in a valleyish area surrounded by more demonic spires, and frankly, there was no safe space here. Well, I should start using my ability. If you could draw the demons away from us, why not? Edna smirked. Don't die, alright. Stella called him over. Have a look at our records before you do. Alka walked over, picked up a few of the crystals and rocks from the ground while he studied the data, and damn, these crystals are pretty much designed to absorb magical energies. It's like this whole comet is demolite. Stella nodded. Yeah, your bombs are going to be fairly ineffective on the terrain. Fairly. It would still destroy it, but it would take more explosions to get to the core. Of the 30 Valthorns that joined Stella, about 6 of them worked on various observational equipment. Many were custom built for this operation. They scanned the depths of the comet, especially the daily charring pulses, and soon noticed there were 8 nodes that released those bursts. Each of those nodes were located fairly deep, but not entirely to the core. The comet itself was a blend of crystals, earth, and something in the center. It emitted a core-like energy that was heavily mixed with demonic energy but did not provide sufficient data for us to understand what exactly was in there. Would Eon survive the pulse? Alka asked. I bet he could, Stella said. I am more worried about the overwhelming demonic mana, and what it means to be planted on the comet. I'd be exposing myself to huge quantities of demonic mana. It could potentially overwhelm my clone. But at this point, risking demonic corruption is a risk I'd have to take. Interlude. Soul Realm. Death. Colette has seen it a lot in their earlier days, but lately, it felt as if she already forgot how it felt like. Then Hafiz died. Why, Hafiz? Why do that for us? Colette asked. The heroes were gathered all in the main tree on Branchhold, in a special part. A really thick vine wrapped each of their bodies. Hafiz was a glowing ball of light. A soul, and the space around them was filled with stars. Soul Realm. Colette remembered coming here once. Long ago, so long that she didn't even remember the time. But this felt familiar. Stars. Flickers. Lights. All the other souls. It felt bigger now. Wider. And she could see there were strands of light that illuminated the paths that went into other places. Worlds. Each seemingly a link. She struggled to make sense of the space. It felt like the space bent into itself. Because what else is there to do? Hafiz said. Don't make it sound so noble. I already accepted that our lives in this world were just temporary. It was time. It was damn time. You planned to do it? Prabhu asked. Yes. If it ever came to sacrificing one of us, I decided it would be me. I have the least to lose. I don't care about anything. I am losing the ability to care about anything at all. Hafiz said, his frustration palpable. Colette had never seen him so animated in years. Colette looked across their magical soul space. At Prabhu. At Chung. She stopped, and then looked at Hafiz again. Hafiz. How do you feel? As a soul. Hafiz was quiet, his glowing soul hovered and moved a little. Only the 5 of them were here. 4 heroes of Treehome, and 1 former hero. Ken. Kefri was never that close to Hafiz. Adrian and Kelly were Mountain World heroes and their relationship was fairly cordial. In the end, everyone went back to do their own thing. Even Hafiz. He drifted away a bit. They would meet up once every month or so, head teleport over to Freshka or one of the suburban cities and they'd hang out. But the drift was there. If there was doubt about the long-term success of Ken's League of Heroes, the lack of personal rapport was one of them. Honestly, do you guys really want the answer? Hafiz asked. Chung didn't say a thing. Ken nodded. Yes. Colette always thought it was just a sign of maturity. A sign of age. The weight of experience. They were aging, and she thought it was natural that they all began to quiet down. They were not young, and it would tone down their drive. Even Ken calmed down over the years. I feel light. The dead hero answered. I feel liberated. I feel like I suddenly can remember all the things that I wasn't supposed to. Ken was the only one that nodded. For him, he always remembered. I feel like I really want to see my family again. Hafiz said. Will you? Colette asked. She tried to remember her own family, before all of this. But it's been so long, and it felt hazy. She could remember snippets, but she forgot what her mother's voice was like. I don't know. I could feel a power calling me. One that's not Eon. It's waiting for the time. I can linger here, maybe a few months. 6. Ken answered. Eon said the waiting time is 6 months from your death. Colette tried to remember her parents. She could hardly remember. Stella once said she took up painting, in her earlier days in this world, to paint her own memories before they fade away. There was no photo here, and the only way she could preserve her memories was to draw them. Paint them. She wished she did. She wished she commissioned someone to paint a portrait of her family when she could still find the words to describe them. Now, she wasn't sure she could even link the image if someone showed her a similar photo. Prabhu sounded confident when they spoke one night about this. That they would certainly know. But she felt from the depth of her guts that they've already lost it. Hafiz continued, 6 months. I see. Then I must be used up a month. How long has it been? The sense of time in this place is wonky. 1.5. Ken answered. I remember our lives back home vividly. Images and things I thought I forgot, now clear to me. I am afraid some of you will want to remember this. Remember the past. Chung abruptly interjected. Ken, you knew this. Do you remember? Yes. Colette wondered briefly whether Ken's memory of tropes was vivid, because he didn't have the hero class trying to suppress his past. No, she was now sure it's linked. Not just that, it even felt like Ken talked about this before. But somehow it never stuck in her mind. As if, the connection should have been clear. Yet what was she trying to link? She looked at Ken, and Hafiz's floating soul. Hafiz. Repeat it again. Everything in the journal. Hafiz said. It's true. Colette paused, and remembered her daughter. Unlike Kefri, who bore many children with her toy boys, and ignored them afterward, she couldn't do that to Rahana. There was no one she could pass her to. No one she would pass her to. Why? Why couldn't she think like Kefri? Was a child made with half the blood of natives worth less? No. That shouldn't be the case. Was it because of pain? Suffering. Rahana was hers. Her child. She was a mother. A mother's duty. Suffering. Sacrifice. A mother's duty is first to her. A hero's duty is to slay the Demon King. Colette felt her connection to the soul realm waver. Demon Kings. What she whispered it, as if her mind was splitting apart. As if the words seemed to lose meaning. As if all was pointless. Sacrifice. What sacrifice? She raised her head, her spirit transported, Eons bridge to the soul realm. She looked at Hafiz and she saw death, at Ken and she saw age, at Chung and she saw anger, at Prabhu and she saw her new family. What did she lose to get here? They've done their share, served their time. Now that she wanted to look back, why did it seem like it's so hard to remember things before all of this? She looked at Ken. He seemed to be the only one actually getting what Hafiz was saying. She felt jealous. Envy. She wanted to know, and she felt her soul cracking. 252. A Tree Plans for Starfall. Year 253, Part 3. Unlike Jura or Lovis, I couldn't hold on to Hafiz's soul. Not if he didn't want me to. A hero was a hero. Instead, I received a Titan frame. I could deploy up to 3 Titans, now. Kees, Hafiz, and 1 left from the 3 heroes of the earlier generation. Supporting 3 more Titans, or 5 Titans simultaneously wasn't a problem for me magically. Titans. Useful for Comet, if I could get them there. I would deal with that later once I got my clone deployed. The hero, Hafiz, wanted release from his heroic duties. Like all heroes that were no longer shackled by their worldly chains, they sought to return. He saw something. I could feel it, and so he didn't want to be here. I wanted to hold him here. With us, but he refused and vanished away. He was a hero, and he slipped through my grasp like a slippery eel, and back to nothingness. Where I hope the gods fulfilled their promise. Because back on Treehome, the survivors bear the cost of his sacrifice. And in Colette, I saw Hafiz's experience. There was a strange disquiet in her, and it manifested in her soul spring. I noticed cracks throughout the entirety of their normally pure white stone around their soul. Colette stood quietly, alone in the wooden room. The hero's journal glowed faintly on the table, infused with the will and magic of the heroes from times past. Here, in a giant attendant tree created solely to house the hero's journal, she prayed. She wept. She injected memories into the journal, and it certainly felt like there was more unsaid than could ever be said. Her partner, Prabhu, was with their daughter, Rahana. Mother needed time alone, to mourn and to grieve for the dead. He told her. But even he could see the distance in his partner. Hafiz and Colette were friends. Colette felt that way, at least. Not close, but friends. I listened to her talk to herself, as if she was talking to him. Things she wished she could say. She thanked him, quietly. Before all of them drifted apart. That was how their relationships were. They were allies of convenience and circumstances, brought together because they died together. It didn't mean much once the Demon King died, and their different interests pulled them apart. The hero class did nothing to keep the heroes together, beyond a shared purpose to slay the Demon King. In the same way, the Valthorns exist as protectors against the demons. Ken definitely had a point when he asked the question of me. What if you win? What if it really was the end, no more demons? What happens to all the things and structures that you and the Valthorns built? Ken may have come around and accepted the purpose and direction of our role, but his skepticism of what comes after never faded. What do you do when your purpose is lost? That decides whether you are benevolent, or just a dictator. I hope that what I see is true, that you will let go. I thought about it, and certainly, my role as a tree is to ensure nature exists. The demons must be removed because there is no coexistence. But without their existential threat, Ken is correct to say we would lose a big part of our purpose. Colette sat in the room. She was there the whole afternoon, sipping tea, thinking, and then checking the journal again. And again, and again. After a long while, she suddenly asked, "Are you able to remove our hero classes?" Colette asked. The hero from a previous generation, Mirai, when you disabled her hero class, she suddenly dreamt of home. She dreamt of family, friends that she has long forgotten. Like Hafiz, life has a way of coming around in cycles. Events rhyme with those of an earlier time. I looked at Colette, and saw a weary young mother, trying to remember what life was like before all of this. Before death. Maybe Mirai would be like her, or she was like Mirai. I wasn't sure. They blend together, sometimes. I think about lilies, about how all the people, all the personalities seem same-ish after a while. There were only so many combinations of character traits. I remember why even a hive mind like lilies couldn't find it in them to latch and get close to individuals, to treat each individuals as unique. Is it because after enough time, people really do blend together and you notice how the character traits blend together in slightly different ratios to form a slightly different individual? Just variations of certain base templates. Can you do it to me? Not remove it, but just suppress it for a while. Just to see what was there, what was before all of this. Colette said quietly. It was something Mirai would have said. I could imagine her saying it. I knew the answer to the question. I think I could. To suppress the effects of the hero class for a relatively short moment is certainly not out of the picture with my current strength. But do I want to? I had a flashback to Mirai from so many decades ago. She wanted death as a release from her duties as a hero. I looked at the mother of a growing baby girl and wondered whether I could impose this sin on myself. That feeling reemerged once more. That moment after Hafi's death when I felt something brewing within Colette's soul. Is this something you really want? I asked. Colette looked back at the journal, closed her eyes and seemed lost in thought for a moment. That feeling strengthened. Dissatisfaction. Discontent. Anger. It was as if Colette radiated chaotic energy. When she opened her eyes, she nodded. I thought I saw her resist some pain, or it was a wince. She quickly picked up the cup of tea and drank everything. She answered. Yes, it is. Very well. There will be consequences. Consequences that extend beyond yourself, and I will do so only after you've discussed this with your partner. Colette paused as she digested my words. After a while, she nodded. I suppose he deserves to know what I am thinking. It is her choice. But her choice has consequences for the sole offspring of two Earth heroes. Mirai went down a death spiral, and I wasn't sure I wanted to facilitate that for Colette. But I understood the need to know, and so I only asked for her family to make that decision with her. Consequences for her partner, for her child, Rihanna. The young child seems normal so far, her soul spring turbulent and unformed. I wonder what blessings or curses await someone so special. With a parent like Colette, going through her own challenges, it would not be easy growing up. I looked at the child, and thought of Arlissa. Such wasted potential. I looked at the parents, Colette and Prabhu, and realized that they were going to be just as bad as Lausanne at parenting. Maybe worse. There was no one to humble them. They exist at the very top of society. What was life growing up like that, so detached from everything? Morbidly, Rihanna would likely see her parents die. Her parents are heroes. Their fate was death. I briefly wonder whether the gods prevented hero parents just to ensure that every child would likely have one non-hero parent still live. I doubt the system was so sympathetic. Call me a selfish bastard again. Ken countered, and the relationship between Chung and Ken was tense. You are a selfish bastard. I said it once. I will say it again, and I stand by my damned statement. You are a coward. You ran away from our joint duty to defeat the demons, and now you criticize us from the sidelines. Well, do you feel happy? Do you feel smug watching the rest of us toil in misery? Chung said. Do you feel validated in your decision? I didn't understand why Chung vented his frustration on Ken. I suspected helplessness, and so he turned on the traitor. They were good friends. Yet even good friends disagree on things. Ken was silent before he nodded. Yes. I wanted no part in the schemes of greater powers. And yet here you are, consorting with the greater powers. Hypocrite. Ken sighed. Yes, I am a hypocrite. But I now know what I really wanted out of. What? I wanted no part in schemes that I have no knowledge and control of. I hated how the gods didn't inform us the full scope of our duties, our burdens, the chains that shackle us, both physically and mentally. I hate they treated us as tools, instead of partners that should work together. I hated we didn't have choice, Chung. And that hatred of you led to one of us dead. Chung, you're making no sense. I have no way of preventing his death. Even if I was a hero, so what? Could I have stopped that last part? I realized Chung's arguments were just frustrations. A bundle of emotions. Chung just stomped, and his magical stomp radiated through the ground. The floor cracked but wasn't destroyed because my roots quickly reinforced the ground. Look, my old friend. Ken tried the soft approach. We've been through years, decades together. We've been apart, and we pursue different goals to satisfy the emptiness in our hearts. To fulfill what the gods robbed from us. Right now, I think the gods' influence is meddling with your mind. You are not thinking about it properly. Then tell me why you want to die, while leaving the burden of the living to the rest of us. Leaving us to face the duty of fighting some other person's war. If you are my friend, I need you here. I need you alive and well to tell us that all over again. Because you know it's meddling with us, and because Chung took a deep breath before saying it. I'll only listen to you. Ken was stunned to hear it from his friend after so long. He suspected Chung was a little too attached, on that point, a fact I knew for quite a while. But it wasn't something to bring up. Chung sighed, admitting the truth. I am not good with advice. I can't take it from the others, or Eon or any of my servants. I tried, but I just couldn't. Please, friend, stay and live along with us. Be the common sense we sorely lack. We will suffer from your absence. Ken let out one of the longest sighs in his time here. His posture sagged as if he aged 10 years after that conversation. You suffer from my absence. I suffer from my presence here in this world. I am weary, Chung. I am sick of this game. I didn't trust the gods, and I don't want to live to see my current faith rot into something else. Selfish bastard, Chung repeated. You know what? I guess I am, Ken said. I am selfish because I want to die peacefully while the rest of you won't ever have that option. Chung's fist almost landed on Ken's face. But it didn't. Because it would kill him if it did. Curse you, Chung said. Ken felt his heart skip a beat. A hero's attack was still a hero's attack, and Ken was just a regular person with a fairly normal class. The dwarven capital was wrecked, but the location was not ready for the people. This is all that damned tree's fault. They must have planned this or in cahoots with the demons. The dwarven king wasn't quite happy about returning to what was a destroyed landscape. Most of the original dwarven citizens of the capital cursed as they surveyed what remains of the home. Foul magic still lurked here. Some of the demon spiders escaped, perhaps squashed or hidden underneath the rubble, waiting to strike anyone who discovered them. As with all prior demon king deaths, the place was filled with the remains of the demon. Demolite. Ruins. There were craters everywhere. Old buildings, all destroyed. The explosion at the end burned and left dark marks in the soil itself. The people were unhappy, and the king could sense it. Some kings gained skills that give them an innate sense of how loyal their people were, the rough tones of their populace's emotions. There was no good outcome when a city is lost. Let us help to rebuild. Some of my Valthorns from Branchhold reached out to offer assistance. The dwarves themselves got to work. It would be some time before the city would be a city once more. The general populace lived in tents. In temporary housing. Long-term temporary housing, at least for a few years until the city could be properly reconstructed. The wealthier dwarves moved to other cities. Even if the capital was rebuilt, the people who lived there would have changed, and a lot of their bustling energy and magic would have gone far away. The king, although he seemed glad not to die in the battle with the demon king, the anger of his population meant he had to find a target. Someone to blame. Conveniently, the target of their frustration was the heroes. Indirectly, we were caught in the crossfire. Year 254. The heroes were trouble I didn't want to deal with. Instead, I focused on Lumuf on the demon's comet. Only one more year before my clone was ready, and already, the demon's comet drifted out of range of Demon Turtle World. We didn't even ship all the bombs we made, so that was a waste. My Valthorns relocated the bombs to Lava World, a process that would take a few months because we shipped so many. Shipping these bombs without proper storage could accidentally trigger the bombs, and we had some of our crystal bombs exploding during one of the demon comet's daily flare-ups. The next intersection in 6 years, by year 260, and we really needed to make our time on this place count. What do you get? Stella looked as Alka placed another magical probe on the ground. It would be destroyed if the flares activated, but it was one of the best ways of scanning the comet's structure. They all looked exhausted, even if the rotating system meant they all managed to get some rest. Those 8 nodes, there seems to be a chamber around it. There are rocky parts located throughout the comet. We know that. Stella clicked her tongue, a little irritated. The flares come from the nodes, but because they radiate outward like a fanning wave, these rocky parts are deep enough to be out of range of the nodes. So we'll just have to dig down the rocks, deploy Eon there. Probably the best chance to get a somewhat safe place. His probes and scanners still couldn't figure out what was at the core. Until we could deploy my clone, I couldn't start creating my digging titan. It's still pretty damn deep. Not all the way to the core, just a quarter of the way. Alka thought as he looked at the team. We should start digging. A tunnel that far down should take us a year. If the comet doesn't collapse on us. It won't. Alka said. These crystals are pretty damn solid. The comet was made from a magically resistant material, so the best way to dig down was to hit it physically. With pickaxes and hammers. It's a good thing some of the Valthorns were more physical in their talents. Dig. Based on whatever data we had, we built a model of what we thought was the most efficient way to reach the rocky areas beneath the crystalline comet. We'd have a year to dig. One of the plans developed by the Valthorns over the past year of data collection was essentially to dig deep, and plant the bombs there. Trigger an explosion from within, disrupt whatever magical bonds that held the comet together. This should be one of the better ways of destroying the comet without actually destroying the materials of the comet. Once the comet loses its bulk, whatever damage it could deal would be survivable. Should. 253. Impact Gardening. Year 254, Part 2. The comet is big. It goes without saying that all the bombs we gathered so far would not be enough if we tried to blow it up from the surface. My own scientists estimated the bombs we gathered would probably be enough to create a relatively large tunnel to the core, but nowhere near enough to shatter this comet. Therefore, the way we used our bombs needed to be quite strategic, and we really needed to hit certain parts of the comet. Places where the magic from the core of the comet holds the entire thing together. Gravity. It's not exactly gravity that holds this rock together, but magic. That is expected for objects such as this. It wasn't created naturally through. Actually, what is a normal process in this world of magic? Why should I consider things that are created by magic as natural? Anyway, my Valthorn observed that there are areas within the comet that were weaker, and likely more vulnerable to our explosive devices. Based on their estimates, it should significantly weaken the structure of the comet. Alternatively, my domain holders suggested weakening the structure of the comet itself by taking out the 8 nodes, or modifying them such that they destroy the comet itself. I thought it was a genius idea. The comet fed these 8 nodes, and these 8 nodes flared on a daily basis to purge the surface of invaders like myself. It was clearly powerful, as it is able to create a flare that covered the bulk of the surface. If we could turn the comet core's energy against itself, it would significantly accelerate the process of destroying the comet. This meant I needed to seize control of these nodes with my clone, or find ways to hijack the energy flows coming from the core, and through meddling with energy flows, alter how those nodes behave. Man, how much deeper do we have to go? One of the Valthorns was a strength-focused barbarian type. In order to protect him from the flares, he constantly carried a set of magical artifacts that protected him from magical attacks. He, and about 10 others were the tip of our small digging force. Each of them were level 125 to 140, so when they attacked, the ground gave way. Physical force was far more effective on the crystals than magic, and each slam of their skill-enhanced pickaxes, the crystals crumbled. Another Valthorn looked at the data. Probably another 2 more months. The barbarian rolled his eyes. This is just as bad as camping in the dungeons for months. I'd say it's worse. The Valthorns chuckled. There's no underground town to relax and unwind. They've been digging for months, and about 3 months in, we noticed the flares were weaker, and less frequent. It's likely that the nodes were designed only to purge the surface, and not this deep into the comet. It didn't get hotter underground. The core didn't release any heat, even if we felt stronger magical turbulence. According to our sensors, there were subterranean tunnels that crisscrossed the comet, not by design, but by accident. These were created likely due to how the entire comet was cobbled together, and naturally there were pockets of space that just didn't line up correctly. My Valthorns theorized that the comet was essentially a bunch of different rocks stitched together through the magic from the core, because there were segments where the type of crystal, sand and rocks had slightly different mixture in them. If the demons have the ability to construct the sun rings, it is not beyond them to construct something like a comet. In every way the sun rings were just bigger, more sophisticated and more powerful. On the other hand, the demonic energies found in this comet clearly suggested this was meant to be a seeding pool. Perhaps there was a time when the demons just flung them in random distances and hoped they crashed into a world. Then, the remains from the comet would act like a big flare that marked the existence of a world. There's just a lot of demolite on this damned rock. The drill slammed into the wall and it collapsed. The group was instantly assaulted by a wave of heat and magic that rushed in. We hit another of those chambers. On the surface, the spawning pools respawned even after we destroyed them. The demonic mana flare-ups just regenerated everything we destroyed, and even created new spawning pools. At some point, it certainly felt like destroying the demons were pointless, because they just respawned. Down there, hundreds of miles below and months from the surface, some of the chambers were filled with demons in spawning pools, but here in the depths, the demons take a different form. They resembled more like golems made of crystals, rather than the normal, usual demonic form out on the surface. That's the sixth one. How big is this one? Edna looked around, as Lumuf extended his senses. I felt it too. This one stretched quite wide. The Valthorns took out the golem demons easily, and here, this deep in, there's no flares to respawn the golem demons. At least, not any we've seen. It's entirely possible the core itself could release a flare. Lumuf looked around. Here in the depths, the crystals released a strange faint glow. It would have been pitch black without their reddish glow. Yet, it wasn't hot. There was no heat in this place. No air, either. The only reason the Valthorns could exist was because of our equipment. The demons clearly did not expect company. Not on their comet. I suppose they should, since we invaded the sun rings after all. Maybe the next comet, if there is one, would have suitable countermeasures. This comet was likely launched before we even demonstrated the ability to find the sun rings. This leads fairly close to one of the nodes. Lumuf said, as he concluding his magical senses. Stella felt a range of mana swirling around her, drawn to the magical formation in front of her. It was her magical observation formation. The density of void mana here is getting higher. She paused momentarily. The core is a mix of void and demonic mana, and I feel there's core mana too. Wait. Lumuf looked back. How? Stella shrugged. Well, just have to find out. Let's keep digging. The place for Eons clone should be just a bit more to go. The demons either have some means for storing core mana without it decaying into normal mana, or they have a way of generating core mana. The location for my clone was not much further. This really is cobbled together. Rune looked around and said as we reached another different chamber. They've passed 3 more subterranean chambers over the past month of digging, and now, we finally arrived deep enough. We were now on a large subterranean structure that was clearly once part of a much larger rock. It even had a slightly different color, and it contrasted so heavily to the crystalline mixture that we've seen on our way down. Why do they do such a thing? I don't think anyone knows. Stella laughed. But it's good that they do so. Imagine if it's crystals all the way down. Then we're really shit out of luck. True. Rune nodded. Soil. As Lumuf's legs touched this slightly different part of the comet, I knew this was probably an asteroid at some point, and it fulfilled the conditions. For my clone's deployment. Well, we're here. We might as well camp here and some of us start exploring what's around. Let's start digging tunnels to the various nodes. My Valthorns estimated this was the best place to place my clone, at least, until we know more about what we faced in the core. Our own theories generally assume that what's in the core is likely to be a demon king equivalent. If planets had demon mothers, something like the comet with its naturally invasive nature meant this comet should have a demon king in it, that would deploy once it crashes into the planet. Records of the energy levels, calculated from the total energy needed to create the daily flare-ups, even suggests that we may have to face multiple demon kings. Not that crazy, if the sun ring's able to call on the protection of multiple demon kings. We would have to approach it carefully, and find ways to destabilize this comet without triggering such a thing. Or only approach the core once we were sure what we faced and prepared accordingly. We'd also prefer to approach the core of the comet with the heroes present. With the hero's exceptional star power, we could destroy the comet, and deal with the demons in the core with higher confidence. Lumuf touched the crystals that formed the walls. Now that we've located the place to deploy the clone, a group of Valthorns stayed back to build some structures. At that depth, the flares from the nodes, which only released flares upwards and outwards to the surface, didn't harm us at all. It was quite dangerous to approach the nodes from the surface, because the flares were denser if we approached it. It was like a high-pressure water jet, and the pressure was strongest at the top of the nozzle. But, now we were approaching it from the sides, and it's like grabbing a water hose from the back. We were getting closer to the channels of energy from the core. I feel like I should have gained a level after digging so many tunnels. One of the Valthorns joked as they walked through the tunnels. My priest merely chuckled. If we could get answers from the system, it would have been much, much easier. True that. The Valthorn warrior, Izar, sighed. He was level 143, in total, from a mixture of brawler and ranger-type classes. Alka just chuckled. If the system gave answers, Eon wouldn't need people like me. I don't think that's true. Lumuf said as the Valthorns continued to dig closer. Eon is always in need of someone to blow shit up. That's not what I meant. Alka countered in jest. I know. The other Valthorns groaned. Most of the younger Valthorns didn't realize how much the domain holders ragged on each other for fun. They've fought demons together so often that they could take each other's shit. The Valthorns extended the tunnel, and then magic rushed through. Well, we're here. Looks like we found the mana aqueducts. Lumuf looked at what appeared to be a ley line in physical form. It was a massive, pillar-like structure that extended from the core itself, and up to the node. Huge quantities of magic flowed through it, and transformed the rocks and crystals along its path into a glowing, reddish, highly dense crystal structure. Some of that mana leaked out, but most of it flowed through the pillar. There should be 7 other such pillars. You think we'll shatter the comet if we blow up all these pillars? Lumuf asked. Alka shook his head. Not if we don't disrupt the magical flow. These pillars merely exist as a byproduct of the flow of energy from the core to the 8 nodes. They are not the cause, and destroying them wouldn't change anything. I think it would even regenerate itself. Alka said as he tried to chip away at the highly dense crystal structure. It was incredibly hard, and any chip seemingly repaired itself before their eyes. You know, it feels quite shit that we made all those bombs only for them to be useless. Lumuf said. Not exactly. We can use it to blow up the source. The core. The Demon Kings. Anyway, boys, time to dig upwards. We need to get to the nodes. Got it. The Valthorns answered. Back on Treehome, Sneck looked at an upset Ken. Colette wants to suppress her hero class, to see what was before all of this. Ken answered. Unlike the rest of the heroes, Ken actually remembers what life was like before they were selected to be a hero vividly. He has seen how the rest forgot so much about their past, the effects of the hero class meddling with their memory. Suppressed. Faded. The effects of it on the heroes were insidious, as if it was subtly molding the person into this person focused on the demons. It stripped out the memories over time, while trying its best to retain the qualities it desired of the heroes. Yet, it couldn't just delete it. Was it because the gods protected the heroes' memories while they were sent to another world, and the hero class stood on top of it? Therefore, if the gods removed the memories, they essentially destroyed the foundation on which the hero class stood on, and the heroes would develop in a way different from what they wanted. In Ken's case, once the hero class was not there, he could freely access that memory. But for the heroes, it was like there was a concrete floor that hid all that memory, and as the hero class got stronger, that concrete floor got bigger and wider, and eventually, they couldn't even see what was underneath anymore. Prabhu, naturally, was afraid. He wasn't sure what Colette would do if she could remember. But he couldn't tell her no. Don't you want to remember, Prabhu? About life before all of this. About our parents, our family, our old friends, all back home. Even if you don't want to remember, why don't you let me remember? We are not complete, Prabhu. This is just a part of us. The part the gods want to keep, so that we serve as their tools. Hafiz is free. I want to be free, too. But, I want Rahana to see her mother completely. Not just this aspect of us. She needs a mother, and increasingly, I fear that this class prevents me from being a good one. A complete person. I want to know. Prabhu had no answer for her, and all he could do was ask for some time. Time Colette gladly gave, since there were still many things for them to do. Do you think we should use the hero class? Sneck asked. I have it, and I initially intended to use it to save my world. But now I realize there are ways to achieve my true goals without it. Ken looked at the little Snek. Snek held the hero class, stored in his soul. The one Ken gave up. Wait. What's the catch? Ken may have spent forever with his little Snek companion, but the hero class was always Snek's prize. I am willing to trade the hero class for Eon's clone. Convince Eon to deploy a clone permanently on Eulera, and be our gateway. My people will benefit from access to the wider world. You know that he refused to do that before. I know, which is why I am willing to trade the class for it. We don't even know what's the conditions to use the hero class. No one has ever tried to create a hero from a hero class seed. There may be conditions to that class that we are not aware about. In fact, it's entirely possible for the hero class to turn out to be a dud. I could therefore see why Snek would offer it in exchange for permanent access and connection to the wider world. But, I may not want it either. What was I to do with a hero class, anyway? Do I even want to create another hero? My clones are genuinely in short supply. It's already hard to level up, and even if I do gain more clones, each additional clone is further away. There are so many worlds, and I need to use them wisely. 254. Tough Nut. Year 255. My clone could finally be deployed, and the emotions among my Valthorns was a mixture of excitement and relief. They've waited 2+ years for this moment. Some of them just couldn't wait to finally head home for a rest. Some just couldn't wait to get started. My Valthorns double-checked their computations and plans. We had one good shot, and if we stretch it, maybe another shot. If the circumstances forced me to, I would withdraw my Lavaworld clone to deploy a second clone. Based on current projections, it'll still take 15 years before it impacts Treehome, so if I withdraw any of the other clones now, I should be able to deploy them a few years before impact. If that makes a difference. I hope it doesn't get there. I felt the clone seed in my soul notify me of its readiness. Ready for deployment, and through Lumuf, I could summon the clone seed. It's finally time to nudge this comet out of its path. Alright, Lumuf said, as my clone seed emerged through the avatar form and sunk into the rock. This former asteroid or former planet received my seed easily, and my roots emerged from the rock. Retaliation came instantly. A surge of demonic mana gushed in from the surroundings, and flooded my growing clone's roots. Luckily I was well prepared for this, and through the mana from the rest of my clones and bodies, I pushed back with mana of my own. My roots spread through the rocks, weaving through the gaps, or forcing through at times. The tree grew upward and outward. Scientifically it didn't make sense for a tree to exist here. There was no sun to guide the tree's growth upward, so in space, in an area with nothing but ambient magical light, the tree should just grow randomly in whatever direction it happens to be in. I wasn't sure why I was thinking about such a thing while I was drawing mana from all my clones, and pushing that mana against the demonic mana from the comet's core. My tree grew, as the flow of mana intensified. The demonic mana was strong, but I was really good at filtering the demonic mana. It's something I've done for decades. Ever since the Rotted Lands. It's as if the comet tried to flood me with this dirty mana, only to find that I can clean it and expel the dirty mana faster than they could throw it at me. It's true that they are still a large ocean of mana, but I didn't need to clean all of it at once, just whatever that could reach me. The amount of demonic mana from the comet's core was less than a full-grown planet, but it was still more than the smaller, recovering worlds. My clone tree grew, and reached its full size. I felt my branches and vines push against the crevices of the comet's rocks. There is no sun. A tree should exist here. Yet, despite the impossibilities, I do have a tree on the comet world, and now I have another one on the demon's comet. I felt like this was too much adventure for a tree. For a tree to boldly go where no tree has gone before. I mentally slapped myself at how ridiculous that was, and focused on the retaliation from the demons. We detected the presence of demons headed our way. Parts of the comet itself shook, and the rocks transformed by the demonic mana. They turned into demonic golems, and tried to attack us. Demons made of rock, and crystals, and cobbled together from whatever that was present. It was as if the demonic mana possessed the earth itself to rise up against us. But this type of resistance was useless. The aura of my demonic suppression field weakened these lesser creatures. My vines and roots stabbed the demons, drained them of their mana, and without their demonic mana, they had no ability to regenerate. The rest of my forces crushed the defenders easily. The demons foolishly repeated the attacks. The walls around us, those made of crystals and all that transformed into demons. That was actually quite helpful, because it meant that with each group of golems made from the crystalline walls, it just created more space. With my clone effectively draining the demonic golems of their mana, Edna and my Valthorns made short work of them. The clone is active, I declared to the Valthorns eagerly waiting news on Treehome, Branchhold, and Lavaworld. The crowd cheered. It's time to move to the next stage of the plan. Titans. I reached out to the Titan frames stored in my soul realm, and prepared them for use. Depth worm. I repeated to my Valthorns. My domain holders nodded. While waiting, my Valthorns constructed even more tunnels throughout the demon's comets, preparing for the bombs that would be everywhere. My roots spread. The demons resisted. Their overwhelming quantities of mana put up a good fight and slowed the speed of my spread. I couldn't plant subsidiary trees here. They were too easily overwhelmed by the demonic mana, and would then die. Instead, only my giant attendant trees could be deployed in this sunless world. Back home, I abused my teleportation ability to ship truckloads of the comet's crystals to Lavaworld, where a huge deployment of research trees and Valthorns worked on developing roots and plants adapted to the crystals. Just as how some plants learned how to grow and climb on concrete structures, I believe I can magically create plants able to work on these crystal structures. We already shipped some back during that 1-year overlap as it coasted close to the demon turtle world. It'll still take some time to develop plants adapted to crystals. My roots spread. Demonic mana pushed back. Despite the presence of tremendous tranquility, the battle between the demonic mana and mine continued forever. My clone drained the demonic mana, and expelled them. The crown of my clone tree ignited in flames, as the demonic mana burned. I pushed towards the nodes. Giant attendant trees, bit by bit. All while the demonic golems tried to attack us. The pace of my expansion was slow. Slow. We were too damn slow. I need more mana. I explained the progress to my Valthorns. Right now, the mana generation from all my worlds was used to sustain far too many different projects. In terms of mana, Cometworld and Lavaworld are both mana deficit worlds. Tropics World has finally approached break-even, but it hadn't started to really generate mana to add to the pool. Treehome, Mountain World and 3 worlds are the 3 mana generating worlds. On top of that, each teleportation between worlds, through my clones, also consumed a little bit of mana. Immaterial individually, but in aggregate, they added up. I also spent mana sustaining 2 titans, Patrick and Hytrerion, and now will add another one for the depth worm. I was relatively sure I'd keep them, so turning them off was out of the picture. Patrick got to work analyzing all my mana consumption. I spent a relatively large amount of mana sustaining the whole beetle army that supported the central continent. These were pretty much the logistics backbone of Treehome, and again, out of the picture. So, I thought about it for a moment, and spoke to the heroes, and the other domain holders. Do you want to share your mana with me? Due to the way my clones work, I can essentially move mana from place to place with hardly any loss between my clones. There's always some mana loss from transportation, when it's moved, but my clones are pretty much magically entangled that any movement between them is instantaneous. Between my lesser trees and through my roots, there is some energy loss. Just like how my attacks and my abilities are weaker far away. That said, my giant attendant trees also act as amplifiers, and they also reduce energy loss from transmission, in the same manner that the giant attendant trees also reduce the distance penalty to my skills. For heroes and for the other domain holders like Lilies and Arya, their mana was respectable too. The heroes just needed to drop by every few days to let me drain them off their mana, which I used to supercharge my expansion on the comet. I could theoretically send them to the comet, but without knowing what I faced, it seemed rather dangerous. With the additional mana, I burned through them to force the demon's mana back. But it stirred the comet's defenses. The presence of star mana swirling against the demonic mana triggered the comet to vibrate violently. What the hell is happening? Edna looked around while the entirety of the comet shook, and this time, I felt the mana flows that was previously sent to the nodes shifting and moving around us. The rivers of demonic mana that powered the nodes instead moved like it was a serpent, and the rocks around us, those that still carried the taint of the demon's energy transformed. Demons. Edna said as gigantic demons charged at us. Golems that were made of so much demonic energy, and I immediately recognized the familiar feeling. Run. I commanded. They are self-destructing golems. Inwardly I cursed. The demons clearly didn't mind blowing themselves up. In a way, that would achieve the goal of destroying the comets. But, why would they do something like that? Unless the entire comet is a crudely made golem. Stella's observation came just as immediately as mine. We've been lurking on the demon's body, and Eons a parasite on one of its parts wrestling against it. They could regenerate. Alka mused. He's been itching to use his detonation ability, but so far, we didn't get such a violent reaction from the comet. My roots attacked them, preventing them from getting close to my clone. The golems exploded in a flash of demonic mana. Their explosion was made of highly dense demonic energy. Then I noticed something unusual. The golems were running towards where I injected the star mana into the ground. They stopped if engaged, but otherwise they seemed to be looking for something. I decided to test it out. I spawned one of my trees, and used some star mana to push back against the demonic mana all around it. The golems, as if alerted, swarmed and charged towards that tree, and detonated themselves. The subsidiary tree didn't stand a chance and exploded into smithereens. My initial plan of hacking into the nodes now had to be scrapped, because the rivers or flows of mana in the comet were now shifting violently, moving and spawning more of those explosive golems packed with demonic mana. The demons started spawning conventional defenders, but also packed with demonic mana. Serpents made of rock and sand. They attacked my clone, and together with the self-destructive golems. These golems, with the amount of mana they contained, could rip through my defensive shields. At a certain distance I could still block them, but it was hard to properly protect my Valthorns while fighting the demonic serpent. I had to pop them before they got close and trigger their explosions. Their explosions at a distance still created shockwaves, and my forces immediately retreated into my clone. The multiple gigantic serpents. The demons, as much as I hated to admit it, was pushing me back and winning. They didn't mind blowing themselves up, because the immense magical energies they possessed meant they could regenerate easily. I needed to push back. I struck the demons with roots and vines. I drained them of demonic mana. Then, the demon core's river of mana moved around and all of them focused on my clone. If I had hands, this sensation was quite like putting my hand into a burning fire. The demonic mana, previously just distributed and scattered, now focused all on my clone. It overwhelmed my lesser trees easily, because this was the entirety of the comet's mana. All of the rivers of mana that fueled the nodes redirected towards my clone. A part of me, my clone body struggled to push back, and maintain control. My clone body shook as if we were being uprooted. Parts of my peripheral roots were transformed by the demonic mana, turning into black-reddish things, mixed with crystals. The mana tried to wrestle control of my body, but the main part of my body was protected by my domain. That was impervious. My domain was like an invisible screen that it couldn't pierce. This was a part it couldn't possess, it was a feature of the system. But everything outside that screen burned and transformed. All my smaller trees were torched and turned into crystallic rock by the overwhelming quantity of demonic energy. Like standing in a thunderstorm with an umbrella, my soul and the main parts of my body were the only parts that were still dry. Everything else was soaked. The demon's mana poured and tried to overwhelm me, but it was useless against the domain. Instead, it tried to corrupt the ground around me. Again, my domain protected a large segment of the ground where my roots reached. It felt like we were imprisoned. With the overwhelming amount of mana the demons kept sending our way, and all the suicidal golems constantly blowing up around my tree, I couldn't even send any of my folks out there. My clone only survived because my main body's toughness is really high, and the explosions merely burned through a few layers of my wooden shields, and just merely blackened my clone's barkskin. But for my Valthorns and domain holders, I don't think they could face the demonic mana head-on. Maybe the domain holders, because their domains protect their souls and body, but with the overwhelming demonic mana severely restricting my range, we needed to rethink our approach. I constantly drained the demon's mana, trying to get better at dealing with them, and even with the entirety of the demonic mana focused on me, I still tried to push back. I tried to grab control. Corrupt it. How do I reverse this? Even with the hero's star mana, the comet had way too much mana. I needed more. Or maybe, I needed something different. If I fail to regain control, the comet will effectively destroy everything we've built. But as much as I hate to say it, it seems like I've bitten off more than I can chew. Evacuation. It was the option I hated the most. I'd be giving up on Treehome, and I'd have to rebuild from scratch. I needed to figure out what was the best way to fight against the demon's mana. There must be a way I can win. 255. Rotting Wood. Year 256. I spoke to Lilies first, and Lilies understood. Our roots connected, and I shared the images and experiences on the demon's comet. There was a shared, mutual realization that evacuation should be our utmost focus. There had to be a way to achieve it without losing so much we've built so far. I felt Lily's understanding, and more importantly, agreement. We would need to rethink our strategy, move our people. Will of the world. Lily's first thoughts were to beg for aid. To move our world in the void sea. I promptly tried it, threw my roots all over the world. I sent my thoughts through ley lines to the will deep beneath. Nothing. Refusal. I cursed. I tried it before, but even with new information nothing changed. The will would not move without the suitable authority commanding it. My Valthorns and domain holders returned to Treehome, and they felt a little defeated. But it was not over yet. This battle against the comet was not yet over. But our odds were slim, and Stella redirected a group of the Void Mages to other projects. Mainly, to find new worlds that we could spread our population. The central continent has been incredibly prosperous over the past few decades, and that meant we are dealing with far higher levels of people than we've ever had in the history of Treehome. It's likely there was never a time in history when there were this many living beings on this world, thanks to all the periodic disasters. I thought about teleporting large quantities of star mana bombs over to my clone on the Demon's Comet. It might be enough to shatter it, if I could get enough. But Alka's immediate computations suggested it wouldn't be sufficient. Not at our current quantity, or strength. The heroes needed to make a far more powerful star mana bomb. Something capable of doing a lot more damage than anything we've done before, but sadly, the heroes are not in the best shape for that assignment. Lumoof was happy to be back in more comfortable dwellings, but even I could sense the nagging worry at the back of his mind. I could feel him occasionally take moments just to calm himself, and to live in the present. There was no point thinking about whether this was all going to be gone soon. Life was on a timer. It was always on a timer, in different ways or forms. Change was inevitable. Stella dropped by to visit one of those days, with food from their favorite restaurant. How many worlds do you plan to visit? Lumoof looked back at Stella. Any good ideas? I think it wouldn't be enough. We had reports from the Tropics world that it wouldn't be able to absorb large quantities of refugees. Its production and resources still significantly lagged behind Treehome due to its generally weaker levels of ambient mana. Even with my blessings and the presence of stronger druids, the soil itself was weak, and there was only so much one could squeeze out of a parched soil. The planetary core's strength ultimately fuels everything about that world. Still, the druids tried their best to get the world ready. They used spells meant to massively restore the land's vitality, special plants that feed life back into the soil. Just like my trees. But we couldn't avoid the fact that if we moved everyone to Tropics World, our current estimates indicate that the food output of Tropics World would just be enough to provide subsistence for the entire world's population. I wouldn't be able to feed the population the way we do today. Not without large-scale food imports from both Mountain World and Three Worlds. Maybe I should be happy with that, but no. It's not good enough. Not with our goal of freeing our world from the demons. The reality of creating an army at the strength of the Valthorns required a lot of resources, a lot of food. It is difficult to train strong warriors and maintain a powerful standing army with terrible food supplies. The soul nourishes the body, and the body nourishes the soul. It is a feedback loop. With a poor physical condition, it has effects on mana generation, mana capacity, healing, and mental faculties. That didn't even go into the issue of construction. The sheer numbers of the world's population of at least a few hundreds of millions meant we'd have to provide housing for that many people. This was an issue that would need the combined effort of multiple million workers. Even with the construction of multiple new cities on Tropics World, the scale still wasn't enough to adequately for that many people. It would truly test the theoretically with my upper limit of subsidiary trees, spawn a few million trees, and that would house that many, but still not enough. But, with the low levels of ambient energy, it's likely I would ultimately end up with a huge mana sink. If we lost Treehome, my current largest source of natural mana, the mana deficit would be even worse. We had to mitigate it. Not substantially, but at least a tenth or a fifth of the world's population would have to move to Mountain World and Three World. We looked at Branchhold, and my growing hidden city on Three Worlds. We've been expanding them gradually over the past few years. Branchhold was a prime candidate for massive expansion, even if ID resisted it in the past. There was no choice, now. Circumstances forced my hand and ID have to make this world do their share and absorb some of the people. I would need to mitigate the political fallout afterward. As for Three World, ID need to have another talk with Jonpu. Lumoof and Stella sat in his fancy dining room. His residence was decorated in an understated style but had a fantastic view of the sprawling metropolis. He kept few trinkets or decorations, his wall filled with all his broken equipment. The food was decent, and Stella activated a small crystal gem that projected out a star map. My Void Explorer continues to move to more worlds, and if we hit one that's habitable like the Beast World, I think we should take it. Take it. Lumu flinched. Invade. Stella said. I am not mincing words here, but if we encounter a world that can support us, we should take it. That doesn't make sense. You might as well advocate for an invasion of the Mountain World or Three World. Those worlds can support us. Hell, let's invade the Angels too. Engleworld surely can support our population. That's not a bad idea. I came to the realization that invasion is ultimately a necessity. Stella countered. I think you're not thinking straight. Why not the Demon Worlds? Lumuf rebuked. The Valthorns can handle most demonic foes, and the Demon King never actually attacks its own world. A waning world is not sustainable. The demon-controlled worlds fade, eventually. We can free multiple worlds. Lumuf countered. We did it on Houndsworld. A few more free worlds and we spread the people around. Do we have time for that? Stella looked out of the balcony. I didn't need Patrick's mind reading to know how tormented she felt. I don't know. Lumuf shrugged. But they won't be linked by Eons clones. We will have to build rift gates. Those cities and worlds will have to find ways to recover without Treehome as the core world. Stella thought. What if they don't move? Like the dwarves. All we can do is offer them a choice. Lumuf said. There will be those who take the mantle and be pioneers. There always will be. We will support them, and they will lay the foundations for the majority. My void domain holder shut her eyes for a while, her eyes of eternal darkness swirling. I'll need to get started. Start looking. Let me know if you need me. I think you're needed elsewhere, for now. Kay sat next to the aging Ken. His age was increasingly more noticeable lately, partly due to the stresses of the comet. It's been a few years since the fellow MBER's death, but it still hangs over them. You alright? Kay asked. Ken just frowned. Eon still refuses to answer me about what to do with the hero class. Give him some time. I asked him 2 years ago. That's still not enough time. Kay chuckled. She plateaued in terms of levels, not more than level 110. It was partly because she stopped participating in the higher level battles, as well. Former heroes, Kay and Ken, seemed to still retain some leveling benefit, even if they didn't keep any of their heroic blessings. Is that why you've called me? Nah, I wouldn't bore you with my whining about Ian's slow decisions. Ken shrugged and offered her a glass of tea. She didn't need it. I want your views on the hero class. What can we do about it? And have you heard about our plan for a League of Heroes? Yeah, I heard. It goes around. But with us not discovering new hero worlds yet. Ken coughed. But that's not the point. Long ago, they wanted me to lead it. I am beginning to think I am not the best suited for that role, and I want to pass it on to someone. Someone immortal, like the heroes. He's artificial face still revealed a look of horror. Oh no, you want me? Genius. Ken laughed. I'll die of old age, or some shit like that in a decade or maybe 2 if I get lucky. Look at these creaky old bones. Even with the blessings of high levels I am nowhere near my best shape. Kay frowned. That's because you refuse to participate in battles. Without the battle experience. I know. You don't have to repeat it to me. I've heard that nagging lecture 1,000 times. Ken said. There was a burst of de-aging at level 100, level 125 and level 150. Between and below that, the effects on aging were subtler. He was nearest to the level 100 threshold, but he refused to participate in any of the tasks needed to get there. Chung called it planned suicide. I couldn't disagree. I am beginning to think my approach was too aggressive. Too in your face. I see how you work with Lausanne and the heroes, and I think your gentle, less intrusive approach may be the better one. I can't be the bridge, or the chain that holds the heroes together. But I think you can. You have the most complete hero experience of all. You did your part as a hero, I didn't. I just ran when I could. A long silence between the two, before Ken continued. Even now, I am running. I am leaving this shit to others to clean up. Kay sighed. I can't do it. I couldn't even convince my 2 hero mates to fight by my side, and I died to the Demon King. You're asking for someone who has a bad track record to lead something much bigger. Ken nodded. I believe dying on the job still counts as work experience. A great testament to your commitment. The golem lady chuckled, and then turned serious. No. There's no one else. I don't know the 2 other former heroes, and from what I heard, we can't trust them. Just think about it. I hope when I die, the answer will be yes. You're a manipulative piece of shit, putting it like that. Kay just cursed. I know. I am a master of running away and leaving shit for others to clean up. I even thought long and hard about what to say. I hate you, Kay said. I knew she didn't mean it. On the demon's comet, I continued to experiment. Trapped, surrounded in a sea of demonic mana, my domain was the only thing that kept me safe. I spawned trees and watched them turn into stone and crystal. My beetles, they splattered whenever the rivers of demonic mana entered them. It exploded. Most of my creations too. Then I began to wonder, was it linked to the type of creature? Would people do better? I wanted to witness the effects of large amounts of demonic mana on people. I thought about sending my soldiers, and I knew some would volunteer to die a martyr, but ultimately that was suicide. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be an old man sending young people to their deaths, without knowing why or what they died for. I wouldn't do that. Who volunteered to serve in my army? So, curious, I looked back at my prisoners on Treehome. I have many prisoners, criminals on the death row who did things they were not supposed to. Murders, rapes and all that. Actually, if I was judged by an astral judge, maybe they'd find me horrifying too. For a brief moment, I hesitated. Was I being cruel? Was this terrible? Yes. But my vines, roots and leaves were always bloody. We were executing these criminals one way or another. Death by drowning in demonic mana was just the means of execution. I decided I didn't cross a line. Maybe someone else would judge that I did. I pulled one of those convicts through my ability to teleport people, and pushed them out of my tree's domain projection. The criminal died. Instantly. It's as if they choked. Their bodies shriveled as all life was forced out of them. Sadly, that wasn't the end of it. Then their bodies were transformed by the overwhelming demonic mana. Those human bodies, dead from the toxicity of too much demonic mana, began to warp and transform. I began to vaguely sense the demonic mana reaching into that mon's soul, and felt as if that demonic mana was beginning to hijack the corrupted corpse. I had a really bad feeling, and immediately pushed against the wall of the demonic mana around me, launched a root strike and destroyed that body. That wasn't a good idea. I cursed as I watched the remnants of the criminal. I thought about what I could do, and then remembered my hybrid plants dying slower than the rest. Could I use demonic mana, or creatures made of demonic mana that still remained under my control? Does the comet know how to distinguish my demonic mana and its demonic mana? The hybrids we used before still died and were destroyed by the overwhelming amounts of demonic mana. Ironic. This was us being on the other side of my ability, natural mana overwhelming. It seems to me that the demons have their own version, though their mana seemed to cause things to blow up. In my fields of demonic hybrid plants, I pulled their demonic energy to my clone, and was surprised by how effortlessly my mana slipped out. It went out untouched, as if the rivers of demonic mana around us were never there. It was clear. If I wanted to destroy the demon's comet, I'd have to coat myself in demonic mana. I'll have to be a demon. 256. Libertree. Year 257. I collected demonic mana from all my demonic hybrid trees, and began manipulating them. I've practiced with demonic mana in the past, and even went as far as attempting to mold them. I once used demonic mana to coat my beetles, and made them appear as if they were demons, but inside they were still normal beetles. But I've never tested creatures made with demonic mana against other demons. So, concurrently, on some secluded location on Lavaworld and Mountainworld, I began to shape one of my giant attendant trees into a spawning pool from all my experiences taking over demonic spawning pools on all the various worlds. Lumoof, naturally, sensed and understood what I was doing. Eon, this is the path where we have to walk carefully, lest we become the monsters that we fight. A small step here could lead to depths we cannot foresee. I know. I was worried, but I had to push on. The fate of Treehome depends on it. If I stray, my dearest avatar, tell me. Let the domain holders know of my plans to create my own demons. I felt the risks were reasonable. The domain protected my soul, and the demon's energy would change only the creatures I created. I wanted to create a puppet demon. The giant attendant tree transformed as I allowed the demonic energies to transform it. Lilies was wary. The fury of the multiple worlds may descend on you. Transacting excessively in the demonic energies might create a curse. The tree transformed slowly, as I replicated the forms I've seen in the spawning pool. I had ideas about the spawning pool, because I always wanted to create a champion like the demons. I studied them excessively, hoping to create champions of my own. Each time, I tried to use the concepts but made entirely out of my own mana. This time, I tried my best to stick as close as possible to the original recipe of the demonic spawning pools. With demonic ingredients. The demonic energy caused my tree to turn into this hard, rocky structure, with spikes and jagged edges quite like the demonic spires I've seen. This was the natural form of the demonic energy, and suggested that the demonic energy itself came from a rocky world with such features. The tree was ready and then it died abruptly. Insufficient demonic mana. I tried again. Repeatedly, tweaking and tweaking the mana. As weird as it sounded, each demonic spawning pool was surprisingly specific about its energy requirements. It needed resources from the surroundings, the right intensity of mana throughout the spawning process, and the structures had to be formed carefully. I couldn't just play with one demonic giant attendant tree at a time. If I wanted this to work, I needed an entire farm of spawning pools, each with slightly different configurations. That would allow me to test what works, and what doesn't. So, on Lava World, where it still overflows with demonic mana, and there are still local demonic spawning pools, I started a large-scale demonic experimentation facility. 1,000 giant attendant trees, each a slightly different configuration. This would allow me to test which configuration worked better with demonic mana. I also tried using the demonic mana from the comet itself, absorbing it through my roots. Mana of all forms carries the intent of its controller. It was this intent, embedded with mana, that allows mana to function and do things. Mana without will just floats around without purpose. Each mana absorbs or carries this intent when it emerges through the soul spring. It is why when my mana encounters another mana, whether it resists, passes it by, or absorbs each other, is because of the intent that is tied up with that mana. Intent, from the mage, shapes the mana into form, into spells, into abilities. Demonic mana that seeks to corrupt carries within it the intention to corrupt. While my mana, seeking to protect myself, will therefore clash and fight with the mana that resists. This is why it's often a battle of wills, because intention within the mana is the one that's driving the resistance, and refining how one's mana resists the intentions of other forms of mana is how I got better at fighting off demonic mana. This is why intentless demonic mana, like those generated by my hybrid trees, can be possessed and manipulated. My soul can impose my intention onto these blank motes of demonic mana, because there was nothing there to resist it. The ability to project intention comes from the soul spring. The soul spring is a printer, the device in which the code is injected into each mode of mana. However, if these two intentions do not conflict, they can coexist. This is how groups of people manage to work with each other, and overlap their spells, or even bless each other. But at the same time, this is also a vulnerability. Intentions can be changed, but luckily, a soul's ability to control the intention of mana usually ends once it leaves its body. In short, the mana's intention is usually fixed the moment it exits the body, as the soul can no longer interact or pass on its intention to the mana, or even if it could, the range of interaction is usually limited. It's the equivalent of programming codes going live, free to interact, coexist, or fight other codes. To change it, we'd have to upload or send a new set of codes. Mana themselves have certain natural properties. Just like how star mana was the equivalent of coating with radioactive nuclear fuel, demonic mana felt quite like coating with poison, core mana felt like coating with stone and rocks, and void mana is like coating with some kind of thick black oil. In its raw, base form, demonic mana and energy is naturally slightly corruptive and wanted to change everything into itself. It wanted everything to take its usual shape. It's a familiar sensation. My own mana has the tendency of warping things into trees or plants. Every soul changes the mana they produce slightly, even if it's not enough to be considered a whole category of its own. There are elemental biases even in the mana, just like how Arya's mana is tinged with ice, and Lily's mana has both water and death's taint. Residual codes is a result of processing from each soul spring. This theory explains why, despite no real input from me, demons that I controlled were transformed into wood forms. Like the first time I turned the demonic hounds into wood hounds so many decades ago. Or how the demonic walker transformed into the hulking mass of roots that is Hytrerian. Allowing the demonic mana to flourish is counterintuitive, but I had to rein in my own intentions. I pulled the demonic mana produced by my hybrid demon plants, and used them to produce demons. Gradually, I found a set of configurations that allowed my demonic mana giant attendant trees to not only grow, but surprisingly, absorb the natural demonic mana of the demon worlds and convert them into a usable form. Skill acquired. Demonic mana refinement. You are now able to refine and clean demonic mana from certain worlds. This ability did not work on mana from the demon comet. The intent to conquer from the demon comet was too strong, too violent. But this was a huge revelation for me. In a single skill, it changed the balance of mana production altogether. With these demonic giant attendant trees, I can produce mana on the demon worlds. With this, I am no longer mana negative. I said the domain holders, much to their horror. But, I didn't really need to say it. But for clarity, I had to. It means I will be using a lot of demonic mana. And demonic mana will flow through my body in large quantities. Do we know what happens when you have too much demonic mana? Stella countered. Void mana changed my body, and those of the void mages. I don't know. No, Stella said. We should go down this road. The demonic mana might gain control of you, and its effects. The rest of them promptly agreed. They think this was a line that cannot be crossed. Small-scale demonic mana was fine, but once large quantities of demonic mana flowed through my body, the effects on me, well, I don't know what the effects are. My soul should protect me, or it might not. Actually, no, it won't. This is my demonic mana, and it's likely the domain would not step in. After all, the domain would not resist itself, and the domain is subservient to the soul. This was granting the demonic energies the equivalent of root access to my programming. It could unmake me, and there's nothing I could do. My domain holders were unanimous, and they voted no. Even if this would significantly elevate my mana constraints by turning Lava World from a mana negative location into a mana positive location. Lava World's demonic mana, which was controlled by its demon mother, could be easily converted into usable demonic mana. But it is a risk. I realize I probably wasn't in the best mental state to make this decision, because it is entirely possible that the demonic mana had already affected me without me even noticing it. So, I decided it was wiser to agree with my council's thoughts, and did not expand the demonic mana harvesting. I didn't expand the demonic giant attendant tree's mana farm, and instead, focused on tweaking the spawning pools. Once the demonic giant attendant trees were functional, they could now begin to produce my new prototype demonic scouts. The first demonic beetle created from almost entirely demonic energies collapsed on itself. It died. There were aspects of its creation that reminded me of my earlier days when I first experimented with beetles. We learned a lot from those days. Much of that knowledge is now handled by my small army of artificial minds. Still, we had to redesign the creature from the ground up. The structural elements of the demonic beetle body had to be different, due to the different strengths and flexibility inherent in the demon organic materials, and we couldn't just reuse the old templates. The 1000 demonic giant trees became a large experimental spawning pool, where I figured out the strengths and weaknesses of the demonic material. 1. They were naturally hard, and we've known demons had a strong earth-fire element bias. But, unlike the beetles, they were significantly less flexible, and so, certain elements of the demonic beetle had to be reinforced, while certain parts could do with less. My first functional demonic beetle struggled to walk, but the data we gleaned soon allowed us to prototype newer models. Back on Treehome, I faced Colette, who could no longer put off her request. She waited long enough, and she finally insisted for it to happen. Prabhu was there, and I could see a resigned acceptance in his face. Her daughter, Rahana, understood it as mother needs to find a missing piece of herself, and was thus naturally supportive of her mother. Suppress the hero class. Colette repeated. Very well. After so long, everyone knew of it, but no one dared stop Colette. Despite her calm appearance, everyone could sense as if there was a maelstrom swirling within. It seemed as if the threat of her fury was enough. I gathered the energies from throughout Treehome. With my expansion on the demon's comet blocked by the rivers of demonic mana, there was nothing much else I could do. Colette dipped into my soul forge where I would apply the weight of my domain and my energies against her hero class. I entered into her soul spring, and found the cracks on the vast marble spring had gotten much larger. Your soul. I feel as if my soul and the hero class are at odds with each other. She repeated. Our minds linked through my vines wrapped around her body. Ever since the day Hafiz died, and that conversation we had, I felt as if something weighing down on me. It's holding me back from remembering and reaching into something. Cracks. About 140 years ago, I tried to suppress the hero class for Mirai, to lift the curse within. Today, I looked at the cracked hero class around Colette's soul spring, and wondered whether the hero class was the curse. Power flooded my soul vines and appendages, and it wrapped around the stones that formed her soul's spring. I knew I could do it. The power I had in my disposal was no less than what Harris and Gerard provided to me, and not just that, I was much more powerful. This entire thing was the hero class. It is the means that translate their intent into power. It didn't even take much of my power to lift the white stones of her soul spring. Her very soul resisted it. It felt as if the ground itself pushed against the stones, and all I had to do was give it a hand. Her soul had grown stronger. The core part of her soul now wanted to shed the class that sought to impose itself on her. It wouldn't be too far-fetched to think she might have been able to suppress her hero class, with enough time. Unlike Mireille, who found it extremely painful, Colette's unconscious body relaxed. As if she was in a long, peaceful sleep. She was in a dream. A long dream, as I held the hero class as long as I could. With her soul itself resisting the hero class, I didn't even have to spend much energy to do so. I took this chance to look closer at the stones that made a hero. There were severe damages into the structure of the hero class itself. Parts of the stone were worn out, hollowed from below, likely from the soul's resistance. There was accumulated damage in the structure of the spring too. Gaps and holes where they probably should be none. Cracks and scars. Chips in the rocks. Was this caused by the natural weakening of the hero class? Actually, could it be that due to the forced nature of the hero class, the soul itself struggles against the hero class, and so inevitably it would decay over time? The symptoms we see might be just the side effect of prolonged wear and tear, as the soul grew stronger over time. I could mend the hero class, but I realize it may not be what Colette wants. The floating vase of star mana in the sky continued to pour down into her soul, but nothing. Suddenly, I felt a rumbling. Her soul vibrated and yet she looked peaceful. The rumbling came from where the actual waters of the spring surged out. Like a wave, it blasted outwards. Then, I felt Colette awaken after hours of sleep. I felt joy. You can stop, she answered. The hero class is damaged. Do you want me to fix it? No, that won't be necessary. I gently placed the stones back, and then just as suddenly, the rocks began to move and reshape itself. I can do it. Just there and then, huge waters poured out of her soul, and flooded the hero stones. Encased in the waters of her soul, the rocks themselves vibrated and then glowed dimly, as if they were stones around a very hot fireplace. This lasted for an hour, while ripples of energy whipped through the valley. When it was done, her words answered all my questions. The gods control me no longer. Colette said, as we all felt the change in her hero class. I am now a liberated hero. 257. Tree Blight. Year 257 Part 2. 13 years till impact. Liberated hero. I asked as Colette exited from the Soul Forge. What in the world? I have gained control of my class, and no longer will it inject me with its whims and desires. How? What? She smiled. I actually don't know. But I remember my family, and I remember a lot of love from everyone. I had a great, incredible dream, Eon. A dream of a lot of suffering, but always a lot of care, and affection. And I remember that I desired to remember all those who cared for me, and really desired to return that care to those around me. Then when I felt the hero class return, all I did was push that desire towards it. She walked to Rahanna, who looked at her mummy. Mommy, did you find it? Colette squatted down, pulled her child for a hug, and nodded. Yes. Yes, I did. Can I look at it? I spoke to the hero directly. Again. Later. I want to spend some time with my family. Prabhu wasn't sure what to make of it. He looked at her partner, unsure. So all he did was wait. She carried her daughter, and looked at him with a smile. When you are ready, you should ask Eon for it too. It feels like I no longer forgot our childhood. Rahanna, the young child, merely tugged her mother's hand. Does it make you stronger, mommy? Not really. But, I feel like I see things clearer. As if a veil was lifted. That's good, mommy. Can we go eat something now? Ken stewed at the revelation that it was possible to escape the control of the gods, while still retaining the hero class. He immediately looked at Sneck's hero class. Do you think there's a way to turn your hero class into that? Whatever that was. Do I look like I know? Sneck answered. Our knowledge of the soul never got to that point. Hell, the moment we got a hero class, we're frankly in uncharted waters. Ken frowned. I still kick myself for falling for your scam. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement. As far as I could remember, you wanted to get rid of it, at almost any cost. Fair. Honestly, no one knows, and I wasn't even sure whether I could replicate it. That last part, where her soul itself heated her hero class, as if purifying it, I was sure that it came from her, and had nothing to do with me. I merely facilitated the moment, enabled the circumstances where she could then make it happen. It was something within her that gave her the strength to change the hero class, and the heroes themselves wanted it. But I could try. Modifying hero classes was certainly not out of the picture. Time was ticking. The demon comet was 13 years away from impact on Treehome, and 3 more years till the next interplanar intersection with Lava World. Time. I had all the time in the world, and none at all. The heroes were not willing to go on a suicide mission on the demon's comet. Not with the torrents of demonic mana flooding my tree. As much as I hated to admit it, the demons were learning and adapting to my methods, and trapping me in a heavy dose of demonic mana was way more effective than I liked. So, I focused on my experiments with the demonic mana, demonic trees and demonic beetles. The demons clearly had not adapted to my ability to use demonic mana, and I reckon that once they know I could use demonic mana, they would adapt accordingly. After countless more experiments with my demonic beetles, I was finally comfortable enough to test one out. I still retained control of the demonic beetles, my hold on them through the demonic mana was unaffected by how they moved. I wondered, briefly, about the nature of demonic mana, and its corruptive abilities, and thought about my choice so many decades ago. When I chose Tree of Life, instead of Crown of Magic. Could Crown of Magic absorb demonic mana with none of its drawbacks? I wondered briefly whether the Crown of Magic would have solved the Demon Comet issue easily, due to its natural mastery of magic. I quickly snapped myself out of my contemplation, and focused back to my demonic beetles. I could control them, but I couldn't see through them. My next problem was I needed the means to remain in contact with the scouting demon beetle as it explores the demon's comet, so I tested more variants of demonic plants and trees, just in case I needed them to explore the demon's comet and expand my beetle's range of operations. It was frustrating that the demon comet's rivers of mana continued to focus on my clone's location. I had hoped that they would somehow realign themselves back to their original nodes, then I could use that opportunity to expand outwards, in some manner that wouldn't rouse the attention of the core. Now, with the swirling rivers of mana, it was dangerous even for the heroes, and the constant harassment from the demonic creatures never quite ended. Despite destroying so many of these demons, I have not gained a single level. My demonic beetles were now ready, and I sent them to Lava World to experiment on them. Amazingly, the demons of the Lava World did not immediately attack my demonic beetles. No, not just that. The demons on Lava World were oblivious to it. It was an incredible sensation. It was one thing to be invisible, but another to be visible but clearly ignored. With this, I immediately worked on more demonic beetle variants, and then sent my first one through to the demon's comet. Unlike the other demonic-controlled worlds, the beetles would need to dig, and I wondered whether I could create a titan filled with demonic mana. A digging demonic titan. It didn't take long for me to discover that I could. Conditions fulfilled. Depth worm variants unlocked. Demonic depth worm titan is now available. Starts with high endurance, extensive digging abilities and extensive earth sense. Will also share vision and image. It's been a long time since I felt like this, but thank you, system, for coming in clutch and supplying me with exactly what I need. Still, this was a Titan frame, and it was a fairly limited resource, even if it could be recycled. So, I decided to first try out digging with my roots. Anyway, back on the demon's comet, I sent my beetle, fresh from Lava World's success, and right into the rivers of demonic mana. My beetle stepped through invisible line that separated my domain and the rivers of mana outside. I thought it was going to explode and splatter into goo like the rest of the beetles, but watching my demonic beetle step into the sea of demonic mana unharmed was highly amusing. My confidence replenished. I began to pump in demonic mana from my small farm of demonic trees and spawned them as demonic trees in the area around me. These trees and beetles are almost 99% demonic in its structure, and once more, I watched in incredibly surprise how the demonic mana just moved around of my trees, and leaving them unharmed. The incredibly obvious question thus popped up. Lumoof, imagine a demonic warrior. Do you think they'll be immune to demons' attacks? Eon, I would have absolutely no confidence. No, imagine a demonic suit of armor. If an outer structure made of demonic matter. Like a golem armor. Yes. Lumoof frowned, but then nodded. It could work. I wasn't sure how long before the demon's comet would pick up that the presence of other demonic mana is unnatural, so I needed to work fast. I quickly spawned more demonic trees to expand my range, even as all this demonic mana moved about around me. Perhaps the rivers of demonic mana itself have no ability to tell friend from foe, because it was unreal to watch the huge demonic creatures spawned by the demonic mana just ignore my demonic trees as if it was just the background. It makes me think that these demonic creatures are just programmed to attack anything that doesn't feel or emit demonic energy. With demonic roots, I dug deeper into the demon's comet. I was finally making progress again. It was slow, but it was great to escape my cage of demonic mana. My demonic trees and roots dug deeper into the demon's comet. The rivers of mana was not everywhere, and once the roots reached parts of the comet where there wasn't any river of demonic mana, we could act with much more freedom. Stella regained access to the anti-magic sandworld, and one of the alternatives we wanted to consider was to use massive quantities of anti-mana gems to break free. We've been building up more anti-magic mana crystals, and trying to use them to shatter the demolite. We're also trying to find a good, easy, convenient way to destroy demolite, since the entire comet was pretty much some kind of demolite. My labs on Treehome were heavily experimenting on their structure, and eventually it was Edna's quest ability that came to the rescue. She emerged from her quest with a black hammer. Well, this is a crystal crusher. It should help the physical warriors destroy the crystals and allow us to dig. I'll keep trying for other type of quest rewards. Which then led to the next project that I ran with utmost urgency. My Valthorns assembled a large group of master crafters and golem makers, and sent them over the lava world. We need operational demonic lattice armor able to deceive the demon comet's demons. There were two real approaches. One, where we created a golem frame, and then placed demonic matter around it, and two, where the crafters and golem makers created a golem entirely out of demonic structure, growing it bit by bit. The crafters were already aware of the existence of the comet, but working on demonic matter was an entirely different league. But we had no choice. The heroes had one big question. Was there a big difference in the power of the liberated hero? Not much, and it seems I am no longer blessed by the gods. Colette said after a short trial. The power didn't increase. But it's worth it. But, not increasing in power ignored the fact that the hero's power experienced decay over time. The power of the hero class was strongest right before they fought their demon king, and after their first demon king, it has been observed that some of their skills and abilities were downgraded to a lower version. With the liberated hero, there was none of that. No decay, no future weakness. Their strength was preserved, and they could act freely. I hope some of you will join me, she said with certainty, and the other heroes merely stared, puzzled. Even her partner, Prabhu, merely frowned. I reviewed the data from the incident, of how Colette broke free, and realized that her own soul must want it. Based on what I know, it's likely that if the hero's soul wasn't strong enough, the hero class hold on their mind may actually be enhanced. The very act of pushing against the hero class drained the soul of its energy, so if it didn't have enough, it could be a mistake. I quickly clarified the risks of attempting similar acts, and also explained that there were already tremendous cracks in her soul before she broke free. I would hesitate trying it again, until your souls reveal similar characteristics as Colette. I said. In fact, my gut feeling told me that the hero themselves must have conviction, and a desire for it. I also don't know the consequences of a liberated hero. Does it affect how future heroes are summoned? Do we still receive fragments? Magical research focusing on the destruction of the comet was in full swing, and by now, rumors of an impending disaster leaked out to the wider society. After all, Valthorns would tell their families of the comet, as means of convincing them to make the move to Tropics World. Some of these families would speak of it to their friends. The rumors spread, and as time ticked, the nobility were first to panic. Some of them sent emissaries, demanding details of the rumors. Knowledge of the other worlds were common, now. Everyone knows we have access to other worlds, and so the fact that there was a comet coming our way didn't seem far-fetched. Most didn't know the details, of course. Some thought it was just a super demon king, some thought the planet itself was cracking. Some thought it was just all the water on Treehome was evaporating. It was hilarious and sad to watch how stories mutated as it passed on. But ultimately, emissaries began to visit Freshka in droves, demanding truth. My own diplomats initially tried their best to delay it, by denying the truth. I felt conflicted, as my diplomats and leaders denied the truth despite the evidence. Our official stance was this as a military preparation for the coming Demon King. I was a liar. We were all liars. But it wouldn't help my cause. No. I would expect resources will be needed just to satisfy their demands. In fact, some would demand to be sent over first. Panicking would not help and would lead to misaligned use of resources and time. The way to the demon world is opening in about 2 years. Maybe less. 3 worlds would face the next demon king in another 2 years. The last time we fought a demon king in their world was year 238, and their world faced a demon king every 15 to 20 years. Stella and Kefri pointed to a location on 3 worlds. The Centaur lands. Kefri merely cursed. They've gotten hit hard, and now they are getting hit again. There are times when I feel rich. When I feel we have enough resources to pursue anything we want to. Then there are times like this, where I have not done enough for the demon's comet, and I still need to dig into my reserves to resolve a demon king on 3 worlds. The heroes would be there. They have to be. We would need to properly rig the place for war. Ridiculous. Lumuf cursed as he heard the emissary. Absolutely ridiculous. The dwarves of Mountain World demanded us to reconstruct their capital, and move the structures back. The heroes, in their grief, were in no shape to immediately start work. Matters such as moving the dwarven city buildings back to their original location. Low priority. Colette and Prabhu, the 2 mages, dragged their feet, because that location still reminded them too much about Hafi's death. Lumuf slammed the table. This is very unreasonable of the dwarven king. The dwarves had initially blamed the heroes for their capital's fall. Now, their discontent towards their new living conditions, despite our attempts to assist, were aimed at us. The dwarven king was not wise. It was something I know, but I suppose it wasn't important before. But now, the dwarven king, unable to do much to improve things, aimed that anger at us. I have sympathy for those who lost their homes. But if they declare war against us, that would be unreasonable. Reconstruction from a disaster, where reasonable, was already ongoing. Full restoration was not. What ensued was gutter politics. The dwarves sent letters to neighboring kingdoms, accusing us of deliberately destroying their capital. My spies intercepted them, and sent letters of our own. Most kingdoms were aware of our neutrality, and the nobility, privy to a wider range of news, were mostly on my side. But the dwarves were quite good at riling up the masses. Their rapport with the common folk was good. Politics and public relations sapped resources and manpower. It was tiring, trying to deal with a comet, while these gnawing things came my way, both on Treehome and Mountain World. But I swallowed my frustrations, for now. I will deal with them later. 258. Obstructive wilting. Year 258. Kefri watched as the Valthorns began to pour into the Centaur lands with whatever weapons and bombs we could spare. After the incident on the Dwarven Kingdom, the heroes seemed to suddenly regain their fear of demons, and devoted more time to prepare for the Demon Kings. Weapons shortage still caused issues across all the 3 worlds, but my mages were innovative folks, as some began harvesting crystals from the various demon worlds. Resource shortages had forced my mages and Valthorns to develop a dedicated exploratory mining and manufacturing expedition force, to take resources available on the various demon worlds. We could not just work with our 3 habited worlds. Not without messing things up for those who lived there. Significant price inflation for crystals, runic materials and magical crafting affected high society and culture in strange ways, even if we ensured that food and necessary supplies remained cheap and readily available to almost all segments of our society. In a way, it really amplified class divisions and messed with the education of young children. Those who could afford these materials could give them a head start in magic education, but the rest of them couldn't. Stella felt that personally, because as a former educator, she saw the effects of resource shortages happen back home. Watching how those with advantages and wealth, those who could afford private tutors, special materials and have practice with expensive materials get a head start in life really sucked. The Valtrian order tries to mitigate this, but there is a balance between quality, quantity and cost, and also our other priorities, such as war. Due to the rise in crystal-based equipment, such as crystalline bombs, crystalline magic storage devices, and crystal-powered golems, crystals were the new gold. It's possible to create artificial crystals, and grow them through various means. Yet, these remain relatively slow processes, and the amount of crystal consumed by a society that depended on them to organize work, move money around, supply energy to various equipment and store important memories was huge. Prior to the era of peace, it didn't make sense to build large magical formations for mundane purposes. Magical formations were first and foremost for protection, and for war. That meant the use of crystals as a store of energy, or to supply heat, power cooling or lighting were fairly limited in scope. It didn't help that common crystals didn't store a lot of mana, compared to the demonic demolite. It took significant development over the years, from the entire crystal crafting industry and pretty much an army of other mages, craftsmen and even dedicated crystal growers, to create high-density crystals that could store more mana, and pack in more spells. Development of high-density mana crystals, in terms of total output and total capacity, remains an ongoing research subject, because of the expansive usage options. There were attempts to use anti-magic glass and crystals from the anti-magic world to create segmentation within mana crystals, to pack more magic. The mages called it microcrystallization. The craftsmen called it crystal compartmentalization, or crystal nesting. Density was always important. Even back when we were trying to design bombs meant to kill demon kings in a single blow, Alka and his team have always tried to create high-density bombs and crystals. The best way, currently, remains star mana, which sadly was corrosive. It meant the crystal bombs, created by the heroes through their hero forge, packed with star mana, all had an expiry date. This was true for all hero items. After a while, they would decay, but bombs were exceptional because of their design. They were meant for explosive single use, so their nature was against endurance. The expected arrival place of the Demon King was on a vast field of grass. There were some habited areas nearby, but the centaurs were semi-nomadic. So asking them to move temporarily proved to be significantly easier. If the Demon King arrived at Hoofhell, I'd face more problems getting the centaurs to move. Kefri watched as more bombs were placed. I sensed magical disturbances as my trees spawned in the area in the form of small shrubs. Attempted scrying from the humans affiliated to the Crystal King. It didn't take long for agents of the Crystal King to start causing trouble. Kefri and the heroes were naturally furious, as the fifth attempted saboteur was caught. This is ridiculous. The Crystal King wants me to die. Kefri held up the man, her scorpionoid hands trembling. She was trying her best to hold her anger within. Yes. The man was deathly afraid as the hero's fury rippled in the air. Magic made the world around them feel heavy. He wants a new generation of heroes to appear. And he is willing to kill me to do it. No. He said to just mess with the preparations. Kefri was furious. That's just trying to kill me in another way. Does he want war? I have no issues marching into his lands and blasting that damned mountain to smithereens. In truth, Kefri would be a fool to do so alone. Each of the rulers and deities of the three forces were packed with ancient spells and artifacts. Kefri might as well kill herself. There were certain aspects of Kefri's hero power that were tied to an ancient pact between the three, and that meant the Crystal King had countermeasures against her. But, if the entirety of the hero force, especially those from Mountainworld and Treehome headed there was nothing he could do. Those heroes were not shackled by the pacts of the three. As the fourth force, I thus assisted the heroes in making a declaration, and a warning. If the Crystal King messes with the anti-Demon King preparations, I would apply the weight of my force against him. It was a controversial statement. One that Jonku didn't like, but he didn't say much. He did flag his concerns on the Ancient Pact, that should the Crystal King were to die, the Ancient Pact with the gods could be broken. Some worlds had pacts, some didn't. It didn't matter. If the Crystal King indirectly causes the death of the heroes, I consider that just cause for war. It would also help that I'd be able to then use his lands as home for potential refugees. The people of Treehome. It was convenient, even if I certainly came across as Machiavellian. For his sake, I hope he didn't give me just cause. That said, not everyone was unhelpful. The centaurs of Treehome themselves had a special request. As the war would be fought over their lands, their ancient customs dictate that they must participate in the battle. Even if it was suicide, their ancient custom does not permit others to defend their land on their behalf. Someone from the centaurs must fight. Their ancient honor system depended on martial prowess, and martial prowess did not allow hiding from a fight to protect their home. I have another world for you to visit, Lumuf. Stella came over. The archmages found one of the worlds that could be of interest. The metals on that world are unusual, but we have not yet found. Don't we have the demons of Threeworld to prepare for? Rune, Johan and Alka's headed there already. They can handle it. This one's for you. All right, Lumuf nodded. Another world to visit. The way age works is well known, but its tendency to strike is still hard to pin down, even if we could chart its probabilities. Old age is like playing a game of chance. Each day, you're a little bit closer to death. Every day, the dice is weighed a little more. I've studied death in old people many times, and often, the collapse is sudden. There are many ways old age kills. One of the most common was when the soul's link to its body somehow tears, as if a soul that no longer wanted its body. Then, the body would begin to malfunction. Organs that functioned normally the day before started exhibiting unusual behavior. It is as if a gear just decided to turn a different way. Or a key that went into the wrong hole. A door that didn't open properly. Organs and parts of the body begin to collapse, and teeth would come soon after. Old age is a sneaky assassin, and behaved, in some ways, like stress. Or wear and tear. It's a ticking time bomb. It leaves its mark on every part of the body, for the right moment to trigger, and these marks come in physical, magical, and spiritual form. I've gotten quite good at removing the physical and magical elements of old age, and it is why I could extend some of my soldiers' lives, if they wanted me to. Even spiritual elements of old age, the marks left by the soul, could be removed. If I could find them. For old, dying mortals, if they were under observation and the signs of soul misalignment arising from age were to strike, I could usually step in, and correct that misalignment of soul body. Prolong one's life for a few more weeks, or months. Even years. I could do it, often consuming a little bit of my mountain of soul fragments. Patching a soul had a cost. A small one. And today, the specter of death came for the former hero. He was at home. Ken looked perfectly fine, and then without any reason but time, he began coughing like mad. He started to choke, and my vines wrapped him. Healing fluids help suppress the symptoms. I could save him, but he said, "No, I didn't listen. You have a lot to do that you've left undone." "The hell with that," Ken coughed. Through my vines I could sense parts of his body imploding on itself. This was something I've seen in many old folks, and I could rescue them. If I wanted to. He coughed a bit more, and I sensed parts of his liver and lungs starting to collapse. My healing powers flowed through his body. "Stop," Ken said, choking halfway. "No," I answered. "I will not let you die without the other heroes being here." "Don't tell them," Ken said. "Don't tell my friends." "Ken, selfish as it may be, I will keep you alive until your friends get here." "Fuck that," he said. "Fuck. It's not all about you. It's about the optics of letting you die without your friends. Fuck. Can't even die in peace. Just drug me, put me to sleep and let me go," the former hero cursed. Old age was a battle against the soul, and one I am really good at winning. I could keep him alive indefinitely. But I know he doesn't want to. Snek spammed the magical crystals and sent alerts to all the heroes. I felt the local area shift as teleportation magic created a temporary warp, and the heroes ran in. Chung was naturally first to barge in. He came cursing. "You fool. Fuck you. Can't even die without seeing your stupid face." Ken cursed back. "You don't regret it. Come on. Just tell Eon to fix your soul and make you live longer." Chung said, cursing, but also pleading. "Don't." "No," Ken said. "I am not." Prabhu and Colette came next. Colette walked in, and she frowned. "How are you feeling?" "Dying. But Ian's not letting me die." Colette smirked. "Smart ass is still putting up a fight on your deathbed." Chung looked at Colette. "Tell him to stay." The liberated hero shrugged. "Me? No. I like to believe in choices." She looked at Ken. "Is this your choice?" Colette, "That's rubbish. Choice shouldn't matter when he's making an irreversible decision to kill himself." Ken frowned. "It's called euthanasia." Chung. "Did you not pay attention in school? I was young as fuck when I was sent here. Do you think I remember what I learned in school?" Colette looked at Prabhu. Prabhu didn't say anything, just nodded and held Ken's hand. His skin was quite wrinkly, but today, it's as if there was an extra 50 years added. Snek actually agreed with Chung. "I agree with your friend, Ken. Live. You still need to convince Eon to plant a clone on Eulara." Ken laughed while choking. "You can negotiate with the tree yourself." He coughed some more, and couldn't seem to stop. I injected him with more of my healing energies, and helped patch him through. "Eon, can I die now?" I thought about it for a moment. I've seen people die around me, usually suddenly. Most would not want to die, but suicide was not uncommon. "No." Fuck, Ken cursed, and he flailed against my vines, trying to rip them off like a medical patient trying to pull out all the medical tubes. Unlike medical tubes, my vines were much stronger, so I injected him with a sleeping drug. The heroes watched as Ken flailed and then slept. I've put him to sleep. For now. Don't let him die. He will. His soul is imploding. You can fix it. Chung said. "I can, but if he doesn't want me to fix it, it'll make things harder." "I don't care." Colette looked at Chung. She looked sympathetic, but in a way, he looked pathetic. Colette sighed. "Chung, let him go." "No." Chung turned to face Colette. His face was ugly. "Are all of you murderers? Why are you aiding his suicide? This is insane. There comes a time and place when we must let our hands go." Colette said, with a maturity I've not seen before she became a liberated hero. She spoke from a place of inner peace. "You must let go. The more you try to hold on to him, the more he will resist, and he will walk away. Death is not the end, Chung. Death is not the end." Chung repeated, furious. "This is absurd, Colette. It is the end, In every way and form. No. Not for us. We are promised to return home. You believe that shit. Ken doesn't believe it. Colette smiled. There's no evidence against it. There's no evidence for. On the contrary, we know souls reincarnate in this world. Why is it so hard to believe that our souls will, too? Chung stomped away. He didn't go far. Just down the corner where there was a relatively new drinking place. He better not die while I am away. That's not your choice to make, Chung. In a way, it was mine. And I needed Chung's help. Ken won't die. Not yet. 259. Tree Heart to Heart. Year 259. 11 years to impact. Some of the heroes wanted to let Ken go, but ultimately, I saw Ken as leverage. It was pathetic and sad, but I could not afford the heroes to fracture at this time. I needed the heroes to help me get through my comet problem. Chung absolutely refused to let him die, and insisted that I keep him alive. He threatened to quit from all combat engagements if I allowed Ken to die. I've always had a rather tense relationship with the archer hero, but this sort of blackmail only confirmed my feelings. Kefri, the woman that Chung had a crush on, found his threat so repulsive that the two had an argument. You're a dickhead. Kefri cursed. Why do I only attract people that either want my power, or just outright horrible people? Chung tried his best to downplay the severity of the threat. Kefri, come on, I am just asking Eon to keep Ken alive. I've had idiots on 3 worlds trying to sabotage the Demon King preparations, and here you are flinging threats like this around. Threatening Eon not to participate in battles against the Demon King. What does that make me? I am an idiot for thinking this Hero League thing could work, if it's composed of selfish assholes like you. You immature foolish prick. Kefri. The Scorpionoid lady refused to talk to him, and went back to 3 worlds to continue the preparations. After thinking about it, I decided I was in no position to refuse Chung's request, and it only made Ken mad as hell. He understood, but he was mad. You're a horrible person, Eon. Ken cursed. You said you'd like to let me die. I felt a little shit doing this to him, but at this point, I'd rather offend Ken than the heroes. I will. Later. He understood, of course. He wasn't stupid and saw the writing on the wall. You just want them to help you destroy the comet. My non-response was all the confirmation he needed. To think that at this point, I am fucking leverage. I hate you, Eon. Don't do this to me. There are sacrifices I need to make, to achieve the goals. Goals that your friends agree with. I will throw you under the bus, if I have to. Unfortunately, your friend has forced me to do so. The demonic mana's gotten to you. Ken cursed. I know it didn't, but it didn't change that some people would think that way. Demons. What is a demon? I believe I am at the point where it is important to differentiate between being a demon, and being made from demonic stuff. Or is this me trying to defend my own decisions? Has using demonic mana influenced me already? I asked Patrick, and my artificial minds to give myself a scan, and wondered whether it was even possible to duplicate a copy of my thought process, such that I could remember who I was. They could copy my memories, but my thought process was very much linked to my soul, and essentially, I'd have to duplicate my soul. Not possible. Demons. What are they? It's actually quite hard to answer the question, but we know that they seek to assimilate worlds, and have captured gods to do so. Or at least, their divine energy. They have advanced portal and void technologies, and have the capability to construct superstructures to make the most of them. It seems to me that the demons themselves can't really answer that question, because my roots, made of demonic energy and materials, moved unobstructed through the comet. My beetle moved unharmed. We walked and moved among demons, and they did not react to our presence. We don't know how long this would last, but we have to move quickly. Before the demons figure out there is a pretender among them. Digging deeper, and deeper, while the time continues to tick. Next year, the comet will briefly approach Lava World. If there's an opportunity to launch an attack, that's one of my best chances. I could simultaneously attack from the surface, and from my clone, while trying to sneak some demonic mana beetles, trees and roots into the very depths of the comet. My roots were naturally sensitive to the rocky crystalline structure around us, and it was easiest for my roots to push deeper through the gaps, where different types of rock crystals meet. I had presumed that the rock structure would get more coherent as we went deeper, but the presence of imperfections in the comet's structure reinforced our earlier theory that this rock was a cobbled mess. Just assume for a moment. What if you could have your own demon swarm? One that you controlled. The repulsive idea came from Alka. Despite his own reservations about the demonic mana earlier, as time went on, he somehow came out with a wild idea. It was the magical equivalent of creating a mutant supervirus, one where I already have the cure, and have a built-in kill switch. The dangers of such a weapon was so off the charts that I couldn't even contemplate the outcome should it out-evolve its inbuilt kill switches. If we could reliably control it, it's no different from your swarm of beetles. But we can't. I had no confidence we could control our own swarm. I wasn't so conceited as the Terrans to think we could manipulate our own autonomous swarm. The beasts we seek to control could consume gods, and I wouldn't be surprised if it could someday turn against me. I wouldn't even. The hunger within the demon kings, that intent to corrupt and consume from the comet was enough evidence that demonic creatures have an inbuilt bias towards consumption and assimilation. But my chief scientist was not one to shy away from dangerous thoughts. It was because of his crazy, outright dangerous thoughts that he could design outlandish massive bombs. There are times, especially with Alka, that the line between genius and madness is incredibly thin and so porous. Just a bit too far, and we'd be making our own demons. You're already created your first demon, Eon. My beetles cracked through the last of the layers we dug for an entire year, and eventually cracked through one of the deepest layers of the comet. There, we found the heart of the comet, wrapped in a tangle of demonic sludge and tentacles, and its many guardians. I witnessed, through my demonic roots, the full glory of the demon comet's core, and felt the presence of power. One, a demon king, that took the form of a rocky octopus with way more than 8 tentacles. Perhaps a multipus would be more appropriate. It didn't take much for me to realize this demon king was strong, because I could feel its throbbing aura pressing around it. Then, a core. An actual planetary core covered in demonic structures and materials. I looked at this section again, through my magical vision, and noticed the flow of demonic mana. The core was already mostly corrupted by the demons such that it generated large quantities of demonic mana. Was this how demons generate even more demonic mana? They could infest a core and make it do something else. Like a virus. They could repurpose planet cores into a womb for the demon king. They could repurpose planet cores to produce demonic mana. What else could they do with it? But there was a weakness we immediately spotted. Can we blow up the core? This was our initial plan. Fracture the core, or disrupt the energy flows such that the magic that held such a large structure together crumbled. My domain holders rushed to make the computations. It took days, but we all gathered once more to go through the data. We met in a hall decorated with old, dried timber products. May not be enough. Alka frowned. And we don't have a way to move such a large number of things without the demons noticing. It's likely that some of the bombs may trigger. Alka had a strange epiphany, as he looked at the cracked shapes in some of the older wood. Unless we could create fault lines in the core. Eon, do you think the beetle could excavate bits and pieces of the core without the demons noticing? Create points of weaknesses along the core that would trigger a full fracture once we blow it up. Possible. It was the equivalent of termites biting away at a building's foundation for centuries, and then, all it took was a sudden shockwave to cause it all come crashing down. My demonic beetles set out to work. The demons did not notice our presence, and they even snuck around the demon king multipus without raising its attention. It didn't seem awake, or alert, as if it was hibernating. We've re-engineered demonic beetles such that they were designed for digging and removing dirt, and set out to dig. We approached the demon-possessed core, and got to work. The core did not resist. Nor did it seem to mind beetles slowly moving bits and pieces of their hard rock. The core was made of the same materials as the one I possessed from Cometworld, and also the other samples from Houndworld and Tropicsworld. Just that this one had a far larger ratio of demonic energy. We tweaked the materials a little, so that my beetles found it easier to dig. The demon king continued to sleep, and my roots began to touch it. I immediately felt the presence of something within the core. Shit. I've known that each core contains a will. You are not these things. You come from another world. The demon comet's core spoke. Yet you are coated in their energies. What are you? I wasn't sure whether I should be honest, or should lie. If it was hostile and subservient to the demons, I'd immediately lose my cover. If it was friendly, then I could help it. I wasn't sure how to answer, and immediately sought out help. I tried to contact the will of Treehome, and the will of Tropicsworld. Whether they could see. Nothing. I got nothing. I went to my domain holders, and at this point, it could go either way. I am not sure if waiting too long would. Let's go with honesty. Lumuf suggested in the end. So, I transmitted my response through my demonic root. Someone trying to stop this rock from crashing into our world. Invaders. I felt my heart drop. Shit. Immediately, I could feel contamination. The voice I was speaking with was laced with demonic energy. The entire demonic comet's core shook, as I felt the Demon King Multipus rouse from its slumber. Things have not been going well for me this time. There was really no point to hold back, at this time, so I spawned even more beetles. Here, in the depth of the comet's core, the mana from the core was extremely dense, but clearly, the demons have no way of separating demons from each other. What the fuck? I cursed, as I watched the awakened Demon King crush their own demons as well as my demonic beetles. It didn't care. It began to destroy everything. Tentacles the size of buildings slammed into the ground with such force that the rocks cracked. This could be a strategy. Lumuf shouted. It can't identify friend or foe. So it can only attack everything that isn't itself. I realized that was true, and my demonic roots expanded as fast as I could push them. I drew even more demonic mana from ever larger demonic giant attendant tree farms. I know I should NT. But there was no choice. Watch me and stop me if I do anything strange. I pulled even more demonic mana, felt a strange sensation nagging in my mind, and forces pushing back against it. Patrick voiced his concern immediately. Master, we need more minds to watch for unusual behavior from the demonic mana. You're pulling too much mana from Lava World. I spawned more. But I needed more demonic mana to sustain my expanded roots, as the Demon King's gigantic tentacles smashed into the ground around us. The core itself was unharmed. Could we confuse the Demon King? Lumuf entered avatar mode, and I felt some of his thoughts. Make it seem as if the core is part of us. We could try. I injected my demonic mana into the rocks and stones, my roots and vines constantly trying to spread further and deeper into the core, and I felt more of the cores will make contact with mine. Domain has blocked attempted intrusion. 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 Opening square bracket ... closing square bracket. I felt my domain block intrusions repeatedly, but at this point, all I could do was flood more demonic mana into the demon's core. The gigantic tentacle king slammed its massive limbs on the core structure, and more of them cracked. It did so repeatedly, but the demon's core somehow caught onto my plot, as the core suddenly began to emit a constant wave of demonic mana, and it formed a shield around itself. I tried to inject my demonic mana through that barrier of demonic mana, and it didn't get through. My advance deeper into the core was halted. For now, I immediately tried to mimic the core's demonic mana signatures. It was still subtly different, but somehow, it seemed to have fooled the Demon King. The Demon King continued to smash everywhere for a bit more, and then it stopped. It just sat motionless for a few days, as if trying to pay attention to the mana flows around it. It was all demonic mana. Mine, and the Demon Comet's cores. But the damage was done. The Demon Comet's core was now littered with huge cracks from the Demon King. I took that time to observe my surroundings. I've gotten quite good at blending my demonic mana with that of the surroundings. Intruder. But I had also gotten quite deep into the core. Destroy you. Help me. The voice that got through was distorted. A whisper. Is there a will underneath that, despite the control of the Demon King? 260. Unsettled Boundaries. Year 259 Part 2, Chapter 260. Kefris 3-World Battle. How many saboteurs are we dealing with? Kefri barked. More humans attempted to disturb our preparations, but by now I had the entire area filled with trees that it's fairly difficult for low-level spies or assassins to sneak through. But the old crystal dude was relentless. I caught many of them, and made public executions. Public executions, along with magical broadcasts. Death. I declared to the horror of those watching. I knew the mages of the human lands, and the Crystal King watched. Their scrying magics were easy to spot. To those who disturb our preparations. At some point, I would have to start making enemies. No, I've already made enemies. Could I crush them? I am struggling on whether I should just march an army into the depth of the Crystal King's fortress and blow it up. At some point, we should. Chung said. At some point, we must. My domain holders didn't think that was necessary. The Crystal King was an annoyance we could deal with. It's just like flies. Edna thinks that if we scare them enough, they'd go away. The Centaurs' opinions of their human neighbors soured greatly. Centaurs and the Crystal King's humans went to war a long time ago, but recent events seem to have undid a fair bit of the goodwill since then. The field where the battle would happen was properly rigged, and my Valthorns observed the demons on the other side. Rune and Johann returned from the demon world with a party of void mages. They've done the usual set of procedures, where we planted our tracking devices, stole a few rift gates, and observed its own astral pathways. We're dealing with bugs. The first few rifts released only the stereotypical hellhounds, but the later rifts from the demon world confirmed something else. Kefri cursed. There were just a few small rifts. We don't have a good track record with bugs and insects. I know. Prabhu, Colette were ready in my clone. My city in the northern lands of 3 worlds was a proper magical fortress. For Colette, this was her first real test. Well, after this we'd wage a full-scale attack on the comet. There wasn't much time left, and though I had wanted the odds to be stacked in my favor, with the comet, we didn't have much of a choice. Preparations for the attack on the demon's comet were in full swing. Bugs. The rift of the Demon King opened to the flood of locusts pouring out of them. The mages, Prabhu and Colette, rained a burning inferno and the bugs burned into ashes. Side by side, it was easy to notice the subtle differences. She was clearer, and less affected by the compulsions of her class. Even if her powers were not stronger, the clarity of mind made her stronger. In a way that was less dependent on skills, but from a kind of elevated situational awareness. The Demon King was a giant bug that spawned more bugs, in an ironic repeat of the Spider Demon King. But, without invisibility, and the bombs, the Demon King would not have been worth a mention. We detonated the bombs the moment we sensed the Demon King walked through the path across the stars. At the same time, the Crystal King's attempted sabotage took a leap. An escalation that would begin more conflict. The Crystal King created a portal, a rift appeared in the skies above, one that was different from the demons. A hole in the sky appeared as if the sky was a piece of rock, and a shattered chunk emerged. A golem of crystal slammed down, and strangely, aimed for Kefri. What the hell? Kefri cursed as the golem attempted to sabotage the battle. My vines quickly emerged and attempted to wrap itself around the golem, only to suddenly feel the golem releasing some kind of poisonous mana into my roots. My roots shriveled. At first. But I quickly adapted as I could purify the poisonous mana away. That's new. I cursed. While bug champions emerged from the demon's rift. Chung shot an explosive arrow that destroyed the golem instantly. Some of those shrapnels explode and accidentally smashes into Kefri's scorpion armor. Fucking distraction. I am gonna get that chunk of rock. Dodge. Colette said as she pushed Chung out of the way of an exploding bug with magical force. Do you forget to dodge when you fight demon kings? Arg. Chung cursed, as he unleashed a volley of magical arrows in fury. They slammed into the giant bug demon king sector. Kefri frowned. Chung, can you stop being an idiot? I am not. I am attacking this damned bug. Prabhu and Colette's combined inferno continued to burn, turning the vast grasslands of the centaurs into a swirling firestorm that destroyed the bugs. Thankfully, despite their own fiery origins, the demonic bugs were not fire resistant. Their base natures as bugs meant fire still hurt them pretty badly. The Demon King itself, Sectar, a gigantic insectoid with wings. It was more like a ladybug, and released waves of attacks from colorful spots on its back. Regardless of its gimmicks, the heroes overpowered the Demon King without major issues. The Demon King was no match for the power of the heroes, and was swiftly defeated. My Valthorns supported the battle, and some levels were gained. None for me. Not that I devoted much resources to it. Everything I had will go towards the coming invasion. When the demon's comet intersected with Lava World. What's happening to him? Chung demanded as Ken looked even more frail than before. Age, decay, seemed to set in. Age. Ken responded weakly. Hey, Eon's keeping me alive just to make you happy. But hey, it seems if a soul wants to die, it will die. Chung looked mad. You bastard. Don't do this to yourself. What's happening? Lumuf sighed. What Eon has been doing so far is fix the body. But the scope for reversing aging directly on the body is fairly restricted. If we want to really extend his life, we need to meddle with his soul. The soul is the heart, the engine of the body, the controller of how the body operates. If the soul is toxic or in decay, a perfectly healthy body will decay quickly. Fuck. Chung sat next to his friend. At this point, I wonder whether they are still friends. Eon. There's only so much we can do if he refuses to let us work on his soul. Prabhu and Colette looked at each other. And he won't let me. I could force my way through, but I left that part unsaid. It is better for most people to know that I prefer to use my powers with mutual agreement. Rare of you to return to your old home, Kefri. Jonpu said as Kefri waltzed back into her old palace. There was nothing here now, the entire city abandoned. Looking for something, child. Jonpu projected himself like a ghost, a power I knew he had. He could project himself anywhere in his territory. Yes, peace. And you still call me child after so long. Did you find it? No. Kefri said. The pact that rules over me. What is it? Why does that chunk of shiny rock hate me so much? Jonpu laughed. He doesn't hate you as a person. He hates that he doesn't have a hero he can control, while our new tree friends have heroes at his disposal. If it's one thing that Shiny Rock dislikes, it's a lack of control. The tree is a wildcard he can't predict. So, the pact. What is it? The gods, in an era long ago, were all nearer. Closer. There was a time when the worlds were linked, by bridges of light made by the gods. At least, that is what my predecessor shared with me. You have a predecessor. Kefri could not believe it. Ha. As funny as it sounds, even mummies like myself eventually tire. A suitable successor is found among the Sand People, and we undergo what the people refer to as a merger. Merger. Kefri stewed. I undergo a refresh. We swap bodies and souls, such that I start anew. Jonpu said. Naturally, sacrifices must be made for such an act. That's horrible. There is a price for power. Each time we go through the merge, our older memories fade a bit more. We are the same but different, thus I refer to them as my predecessors. Semantics. Really. Jonpu explained. The world wasn't a nice place. It always horrifies heroes when I tell them this. My predecessor told a hero and the hero almost attacked them. It is because of the pact that the hero could not. But back to the pact. There was a time when we were closer. When gods walked the worlds, and the bridges of light allowed those who want to go everywhere to do so. Somewhere, somehow, the first demons emerged, and the bridges of light were captured as their tools. Some worlds were closer, like ours and that of the tree, that should a rare alignment of events occur, the bridges of light can emerge once more. Kefri frowned. You seem talkative today. Well, you should know, because the pact comes from that era, when gods used to walk on our world. Before many of them left. They promised they would help defend our world, lending their power to their chosen ones, while they fled from the demons. I don't get it. Why flee? Are they not gods? Can't they crush the demons? You are a human, and you can crush insects when you see them. But what if they live in the buildings, live in the walls? Would you tear everything down to crush them all? Even then, some would escape. Gods are affected by distance, more so over time as the worlds drift apart. They cannot crush the bugs in another person's home. Instead, they send someone over to do it. But why not just find the source? Kefri said. The bugs have a source. Do they? Jonpu said. That black blob, the prison, may not be the source. It's been millennia since the demons existed. How many worlds do you think they already control? Kefri had seen Stella's maps, and they've spoken to each other enough to know that the map in itself is incomplete. It is perspective-led, and so, it's the equivalent of you can't crush the bug that you can't see. They could be hidden worlds where the demons continue to live in, where they breed and then launch attacks on others. Then what's the point of this entire struggle? Kefri sighed. If there is no end, and no victory. Life. What else is there? Jonpu chuckled. You create your own purpose, though I suppose that is an opportunity denied to heroes. One of them freed herself. Liberated hero. Kefri said, and Jonpu had a look of absolute horror. Impossible. She would be a threat to the entire world. The powers of a god without the god's control is far too dangerous in a child's hand. Kefri stopped talking. I reckon what went through her mind then, was whether Jonpu just distrusted heroes, or whether he was genuinely fearful for the world. She must be slain. She is an agent out of control. No. Kefri's response was immediate. She's fine. For now. Eventually, without the inhibitions of the gods, they will turn against everything. Kefri countered. How do you know for sure? That made Jonpu pause. His golden eyes flickered. True. I am merely remembering the faint vignettes of the past. But be wary, child. Those unshackled from the controls are dangerous. The hero class is a dangerous weapon, it can hurt as much as help, and it is for that reason the gods keep it tightly leashed. The scorpionoid heroine frowned. Fucking scam of a class. Lavaworld was busy as hell, and my demonic trees were visible to all those who were there. I've sent demonic beetles over to the demon's comet repeatedly, trying to explore and take control of more things. The Demon King Multipus seemed to react particularly strongly to the presence of star mana, and I could use that as a distraction. Cause certain parts of my roots to inject star mana into its surrounding, marking it as a target. The will of the comet was complex, as if multiple voices talking to each other. Intruder. Destroy. Help. Destroy. Every time the will commanded destroy, the Demon King Multipus would rouse from its slumber, but the comet was unable to provide targeting information. So Multipus could only search for a target. Everything around them to be demons. I had somehow fooled it. I wanted to create more cracks on the demon's core, but with the barrier of demonic mana blocking my advance, I moved around, and continued to spread my demonic roots to more parts of the demon's comet. The use of so much demonic mana was beginning to strain, and I had to quickly compartmentalize the mana, and set up specific artificial mines to monitor the flow of this demonic mana. Even then, each time it moved from the clone to another clone, it had to pass through the clone's body. And I began to experience hallucinations. Visions. My artificial minds tried their best to block their influence, but even then they still creeped in. It was a familiar vision. That old sandy, deserted world filled with demonic spires. Home. Origin. Now though, I wonder whether they are looking for a place, rather than just a memory of their homeworld. Are the demons looking for their homeworld? If I could shake my head, I would. Why was I thinking in sympathetic terms with a group of demons that clearly slaughtered almost everything in its path? Still, I needed to prepare the demon's comet for the invasion. The Valthorns and the heroes were prepping for battle. By injecting star mana in random locations throughout the comet, I lured Demon King Multipus to lash out at the surroundings, and it left huge cracks in the demon's comet's structure. Some of it would mend itself over time, as the demonic mana from the core reached it. But with most of the demonic mana curled up to shield the core from my intrusion, the speed of this recovery was significantly weakened. Alka didn't look optimistic. All of his computations suggested our weapons were not enough to destroy the comet. But with 10 years left on the clock, we had no choice. We needed to act, and we couldn't wait too long. The invasion team was ready. As much as we can be. The heroes were ready too. Even with their conflicts, they accepted the task of battling the Demon King Multipus while
the rest of us tried to wreck the place. It's time to roll the dice and attack. May fortune be with us.